Well, hello everybody, and welcome to TFT Tinfoil Talk. And today we are going to be doing the Mandela Effect, and we're going to do it right, I'm telling you, because this is one of the most fascinating, interesting conspiracy theories that I think exists. Now, you may well argue with me on that, but this is a very fascinating subject, and we are going to delve deep into this one. And no fear, no fear today. We're going right out there. And of course, as usual, I am Chester C. Busby the third here, your host, and I am joined by a very interesting panel, which I'll get to momentarily. Do remember to check out all our links down below. We definitely want you to come get involved with what we're doing, and also your ability to contact me. We'd love to have some of you joining us on some of these shows if you'd like for instance TFT today. But nevertheless, let me go over to my panel and say hello. I have myself the most chairmanist chairman, Mr. DeWolf. How you doing? And then he doesn't respond. Isn't it awesome how that works?
Oh my. See, I was responding. I was being considerate though.
Oh, were you?
So, so yeah, things are good. Yeah, I had a wonderful day here. He is risen, and that of course is always a wonderful thing.
Mm,
And in the fact that he is risen, this is tinfoil talk. And I wanted to mention the conspiracy concept that goes, way back not only to biblical times, but in the Bible itself.
mhm.
In Matthew 28, verses 11 and 12, you see the guards return to the Pharisees and they say that the body was gone. And the Pharisees gave them a large sum of money and they said, go back and tell everyone else that the body was stolen while you were sleeping, which of course, Roman guards wouldn't be sleeping. They would be severely punished for that. But here you see the Pharisees starting a conspiracy to change something so that information would be out or information would be changed. And I think that is something that is poignant, to our discussions that we have here. It's happened all the way up, in the Bible itself. And of course, we just have to keep mindful of that.
Well, that is an excellent point, dude. Very, very good point. I don't know if that falls under Mandela effect or fake news, but it's certainly conspiracy theory. There's also the conspiracy theory in the stories of Horus trying to defeat Set and the lies he put out to trick him. Yeah,
All right.
fake
Yeah.
news is something that's been being used for a long time. Yeah, absolutely, dude. And of course, we're also joined by George himself, the very Georgie George. How you doing, George?
I'm doing fine. I thought this was a Farm Aid video tonight.
No, no, and that was actually a
You
little
said
bit funny.
Mandela Effect.
Wow, George, you can
And,
be funny. I'm shocked. I got to write that down. Hold on a second. George was funny. What time is it? All right, got it.
it's like I was here. I had all my money ready to listen to music and do some donations.
Sweet, awesome. That actually was funny, George. Uh, Farm aid. Goodness gracious. And of course, we are also joined by the mighty man of lightning himself, the one who is in charge of holding the oiled things, Thundero.
I really need to resign this post of holding the oiled things. This just does not sound like a pleasant time at all.
It's so appropriate, though.
I am
Yeah, that's such an oily
very,
statement to make.
I am very excited about Mandela Effect.
Mm,
It's a very fun one. It's a very relatively recent conspiracy theory,
it is.
and there's a lot of weird stuff surrounding it. Some of it actually kind of dark, but some of it also just kind of lighthearted and fun. So
Yep.
this
It
should
is
be fun.
weirder. It is weird. That is true. And actually, it seems it started around 2012, which is interesting because that time frame actually kind of plays hard into the theories around what the Mandela effect is, and we'll get into that, of course. But thank you all very much for being here. We're going to jump into this right away. I do want to come over to the chat and say hello to Nick. Nick says, "I remember seeing To Be Continued at the end of the Back to the Future in the theater. Does that count as a false memory?" Uh, no, it just counts as a weird thing, and we need to discuss during this show because we're going to go through a lot of weird stuff, right? And we need to, at the end of it, together, not just us, but you guys as well, we need to discuss why, right? What's the purpose behind it? Because you can throw things aside all you want. You can say, oh, we're just misremembering this or that, but there's too much. There's way too much. to be misremembered. It's kind of like the UFO thing. Now that has exploded since I was a kid, but even back in the day when I was young, there was way too much for it not to be something. And we've discussed this, and we have our different opinions, whether it be military vehicles or what have you. But it's very similar. It's too much. It's way too much. So therefore, we have to talk about why. What would be the purpose? And there's a few theories on that, and we'll cover those. And we want your help with that. We need the chat to give us information, because this is a weird one. This is a big one today. So you guys get your tinfoil hats on, and get ready for a deep dive. You guys ready? Here we go. Now I'm going to start us off here with a little bit of an introduction, so anybody who doesn't know here, and do keep in mind, guys, that of course hitting that subscribe button and liking is awesome. We love that, and we're growing. We're up to 587 people. It's awesome. But hitting that share button is really what helps us out, because we are a live streaming show, right? So if you hit that, and get your friends and family and extended community in here, it would be really awesome. But let me go ahead and kind of lay this thing out for you, real simple here. I guess the first thing I should probably do is come over and share it with my panel, so they can see what's going on, right? Let me see here.
Yes, that would be very helpful.
It would be. Yes, I'm a helpful type of dude. All right, here we go. Now, the Mandela Effect. As I said, it seemed to have started around 2012, although there seems to be a lot of disagreement on that. But it is a rather new phenomena, as Thundera had said. And there's it's interesting that DeWolf, Mr. DeWolf here has mentioned that the Bible, because one of the theories, the suggestions for what is going on, is kind of connected to the Bible as well. And look at this little headline right
Oh
here.
yeah.
Enoch tells of the Mandela effect. Enoch, really? Now that's interesting. But people are really good at making connections. But of course, the Mandela effect is named for and started because of this dude. Now, the Nelson Mandela, of course, is one of the one of the monsters that gets praised by the world for various crazy, silly reasons. But this is a dude down from South Africa, of course, that was fighting against apartheid and yada yada yada. But supposedly, a lot of people remember him dying in the 80s, and I don't know if I remember him dying in the 80s, but I didn't think he was a thing anymore. So when I heard that he died under Obama's regime not too long ago, I was like, "Huh? He's still alive?" Right? That threw me a little bit, and of course the Mandela effect layered that on top of it. And there was a group of people who were having conversations about it, and this is where it kicked off. And they started discussing it on forums on the internet and stuff like that, and it just exploded from there. Right now, for me personally, this is like the least interesting actual Mandela effect from my point of view. Remembering someone dead or not dead, there's plenty of political prisoners that have died in prison, so it's not something that could be easily confused with another. I don't think this one is really that dynamic, but it is what started it, and of course, therefore, the name. But just give you a few little ideas, and small little things, right? Like for instance, here with Monopoly. Did the Monopoly Man have a monocle or not? Interesting. Now, I'm not sure if he ever had a monocle. I think there was another type of game. It wasn't Payday, but there was another kind of game that had this type of dude that did have a monocle. But do we
Hmm.
remember him having a monocle or not? Hmm. How about Mickey? Did Mickey have suspenders or not? Interesting, right? This is a big one for me. Looney Tunes or Looney Tunes? Well, I mean, we had Merry Melodies for sure, but of course it's Looney
Hmm.
Tunes as in cartoons. It always was. I always remember that very clearly. But now they're telling me that Looney Tunes, as in music, is the thing it's been from the very beginning. That's nonsense. I remember this very clearly.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, what you're looking at is a memory of it, and that's the interesting thing. A lot of this is taking place on the internet, although some of it also is playing in our real lives. Which brings me to a question: when they started actually doing this kind of thing, if that's what's happening. Because why would there be fragments of memory from something like this, where it's printed as Looney Tunes, and of course it is Looney Tunes. It's not this musical one that it is today. Doesn't even look right. It looks dumb, right? I mean, Merry Melodies
Hmm.
was specifically created because it was a melodic tune, right? It's why it was called Merry Melodies, right? It doesn't even make sense, right? But yet there it is. Here's another one. What? What? Not only does CPU30 have his silver leg on different legs here in these pictures, right? But it's more than that. Up on his head, he's got this little extra apparatus added to his head I've never seen before. CP30's got a bunch of weird stuff in it, right? Why? This one, I got a few more here just to kind of point out the point here. This one on the left of Mona Lisa, that is definitely Mona Lisa. This one over here, she's smiling. What? There's nothing weird or interesting about this picture. This one over here is so subtle, so dynamic that it caught people's attention on the left, right? But here on the right, that's just a smiling lady. No big deal. It's not even interesting, right? So why is that what it always been, and this is what it wasn't? It doesn't make sense. A lot of these Mandela things are not sensical changes, right? Of course, the Berenstein Bears. Of course, now the Berenstain Bears. What? That doesn't even sound right. But yet there it is. This is a big one people are latched on to. And I threw this little Disney thing up I saw just because you have these I forget the name of the show, but it was horrible. It's Disney TV, of course, but in the back it says the Illuminati. It's written on the board, and kind of Disney. We know Disney loves to do those deep dives into weird conspiracy, public control, all kind of nonsense. The evil corporation is legitimately called that for a good reason. They are the heart
Hmm.
of the Hollywood darkness, unfortunately. And I would think that old Mr. Disney, Walt Disney, would be rolling in his grave for the crap. And by the way, his head's not been removed. He's not in no cryogenic thing. The dude's buried. That's another fake news, right? But this is just a quick little introduction to what the Mandela effect is. It's the idea that things have changed. Okay, and on the internet, they absolutely have changed. So what I want to do now is come back over here and catch up with the ideas that you guys have in effect for the Mandela effect because it is bizarre, right? What is going on? So which one of these would you like to delve into, guys?
Okay, this is fascinating. And now that I'm listening to it for the very first time,
Hmm.
I think I have a theory why this Mandela effect is happening.
Okay, well,
Uh,
let's
we're,
save the theories for later, George. First, we
okay,
want to talk about what ones that are interesting to you is really what we want to do first. Okay, and we'll get into why later. All right.
okay,
But as usual with this show, guys, what we do a little bit different format. Usually, you see me prepare stuff on a presentation like I just did, and we'll go through that, and we'll stick to the presentation. But this show right here, we like to be more freewheeling. So I'm going to be typing live and misspelling things horribly, which I know is shocking because I'm an English teacher. But there it is. But anyway, so there's my opening. Let's start with Thundero. Go ahead, dude.
All right. Well, of those ones that you just showed, the one that I think is the most interesting to me is the Mona Lisa because it's such a weird thing. I am definitely with the on that picture that you had up there, the one that says "then." Vividly remember it just being a very super subtle little smirk,
Yep.
and now it's definitely a smile. Um, and I remember people talking about how there was arguments, literally scholarly arguments about is she actually smiling? What is that facial expression? What does that mean? What is she looking at?
Yeah.
Now it just looks like she's happy. That's it. Like she's just hi,
Yeah.
like she's posing
No,
for a picture.
it's a good point. A lot of the Mandela changes that we see are are don't make any sense. They totally
Yeah.
break the concept of what it is or why it was a cultural thing. Mona Lisa is not because we've seen better art, we've seen better drawings of women. But the thing that
Hmm.
was always the catching point of Mona Lisa is the absolutely incredible subtle emotion that he caught on the face, right?
Yep.
And this one on the right, there's what? That's nothing. It's just a smiling lady. It's not even interesting. But the one on
Yeah.
the left, it's so dynamic, right?
It's just a lady posing for a picture. We've all done it.
Yep.
Just a slight little tiny smile that you do with a picture when you're not trying to cheese it up. Whereas the other one, she's conveying all sorts of emotions, and people literally, this is no joke, have had endless hours of debates at
Hmm.
a academic level. What is she looking at? What is that expression? What does that mean? And that's exactly what he intended, by the way. Um, he didn't want it to be easy to look at that and just say, this is just a portrait of this, right? He wanted to express human, um, the mystery of humanity, right? The human nature in a picture, in a simple picture, is we're mysterious. We don't always do things that make sense. That's what he wanted, and that's exactly what the original one does, because it doesn't exactly make sense exactly what she's doing. But this new version, it's just a lady smiling.
It
Like
is.
there's even her eyes are a little bit happier. Like if you look in the way her eyes inflect up a little bit more, it's just a happy woman. That's all it is, or a woman at
Actually,
least posing for a picture.
actually, if you study this picture, there's only a single difference. There's only one difference, and it shows you how powerful it is actually, because there's literally one change. And if you look here, let me bring my mouse over. If you look here on the side of the lip, over here, they have lifted it up. And here, the interesting thing about looking at this lifting up, it actually looks unprofessional. It looks odd. And we know that this dude, Leonardo da Vinci, was a freaking master, right? He doesn't play around, right? That
Right.
looks off. It looks literally unprofessional. Even that catches my attention, right? Whereas this over here is
Hmm.
perfection. Right. So what they
Hmm.
did was they just pulled the lip up a little bit, and it looks like they literally did it in a software program, right?
Yep, that's what I was
So
gonna say. It looks like somebody went into like Photoshop or whatever and pulled it up, and it made her face look a little different entirely because they basically just took the digital image and pulled it up instead of doing it properly,
mhm,
which would be to kind of cut that out, pull it up a little bit, and then put it back in. Um, it's not good. Da Vinci's a better artist than that,
yes, he is.
and he's one of the greatest of all time. And it's
Mhm.
because he was able to do very subtle things with everyday stuff, like a picture of a woman.
Yeah,
Well,
and of course most of the stuff he was more of a sculptor than anything. Well, it's actually he
Yeah,
was a weapon designer is really what his job was. But
yeah,
he did a lot more sculptor than painting. But that painting, of course, is legendary for a reason.
well,
yes.
here's an effect probably on the Mona Lisa.
Mhm.
Um, Open question: how big do you think the Mona Lisa painting is?
I've never seen it, so I don't know.
Oh, it's very
Some of
small.
these portraits are huge, some of them are not. I have no clue.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's small, isn't it? It's not very big.
It is. It's a very small painting, very small painting. But when you ask the mass people, they would say, "Oh, I could swear it's like a 20 by 24 painting."
Right. Yeah, because in movies, a lot of times they'll portray it as a very big portrait style picture instead of just like a little, basically the size of a piece of paper, right?
Uh, eight,
Paper
8.5
picture.
by 11.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's not very big at all. It's just an interesting thing because it's like you were saying, it's one of those things. Why change that? What's the point of changing that?
Yeah, because they don't
What does
show it in
that gain?
perspective is where the real why. We don't see it in
Yeah.
perspective is why, right? Yeah, it is real teeny. Look at it.
And that's, yep.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just a very strange thing. It's one of those things that there's no doubt for most people, anybody who's ever been in the area of art knows that there have been literally endless amounts of arguments about that picture, and it's clearly been changed. There's no question. It's not
Mm.
the same.
Yeah, and this is an incredibly popular topic because people are so convinced. And like I said, it's too big for there not to be something going on. And there's also these fragments of memory, as it were. If you dig hard enough on a
Hmm.
lot of stuff, you can find what the people are saying. No, I remember as this. So if it was never that, then why is it this? But let me come to the chat real quick and just try to keep up here. We got the parallel Earth thing. Yes, that's right. We'll get into that. Pope Fire says maybe it's a human mind changing thing, convincing itself one way. It could be. Evan von Skyver says, I have concrete evidence. It was always Luke. I am your father. Yeah, well, James Earl Jones said it was in interviews. So I mean, come on. That's another one, right? No, I am your father. Luke, I am your father. We all remember Luke, I am your father. Even James Earl
Yep.
Jones remembers it. And he's the dude that spoke it. Pope Fire says maybe time travel does exist. Maybe Trump is a time traveler. And time resets itself once it's been. That's another conspiracy theory. Been altered. I swear, we were in class talking about him being alive a good 3 years before he died. Okay. Maybe you meant to say being dead. But anyway, we had to write papers on him. Okay. Evan says, "Can I post my evidence, please, dude? Post all you want, dude." Andy says, "What if I told you Morpheus never said what if I told you?" Huh? No way. Eric says, we're tiny, we're toony, we're all a little loony, and in this cartoony, we're invading your TV. That's right, Eric. You are
That is
awesome,
true.
Eric. You are absolutely awesome. That's
Words of
right,
wisdom.
right. Mitchell
Exactly.
Coleman
Yes.
says, "Boo, we want frozen Walt." Sorry, dude. Eric says the Illuminati is keeping Walt Disney on ice in an underground cave in Antarctica. That is why all the countries have agreed not to explore the area out of fear of thawing him out. Oh, Pope Fire says, "I remember movies making fun of Mona Lisa's smile or not." Yes, of course, that's right. It looks evil. Ooh. Nick Debbie says, "I swear Chester told not a dad joke." Yes, well, I'm not the dad joke threat. Understand that the chairman here and George are that. That's them. I'm a good comedian. They're the dad joke comedians. Just understand that. Mitchell said, "I thought they were keeping the body
Not
of
true.
Walt underneath the small world." Right? Yeah, there you go. Ted Lehman says, "Is this affect mental laziness related to social media?" Well, that's a good question. And we're gonna have to get into that, but I'm caught up with the chat. So, Thunder, give me your example so I can start typing, dude.
Okay. The
Well,
one I was. Oh,
I
go ahead.
haven't I haven't weighed in on this Mona Lisa because there's even a song, I believe it's a country song,
Mhm.
has Mona Lisa lost her smile?
Yep.
I think that that song is even possible if you have this idea that the smile is ever so small that it could also be, imperceptible. Because, for instance, I remember being a kid. I think I remember being a kid, in which I would see a picture of the Mona Lisa, and I kind of commented that there is no smile. People would make that argument. I guess that's what you were talking about on the fact that Mona Lisa has a smile. So I looked at it then as a kid and said, what smile? She's not really smiling. And then, of course, nowadays when you see this, it to me also brings forward a lot of the other ideas behind Leonardo. There's a lot of conspiracy things, but about him on what he hid inside paintings,
Mhm.
and maybe in this particular instance, that the actual Mona Lisa has been removed, and that we have a separate, different one. Um, but of course, if you go back and look at old pictures should still have, if it was just physically removed to remove any other sorry, any other secret information that he may have hidden within the painting, then maybe you should have older pictures that in which she doesn't smile. But this really is an odd one because, like I said, not only is there me, but there's also this song and other things talking about it.
Yeah, no, there are, and just look at this little stuff right here, right? Volvo. I grew up in Rhode Island, Narragansett. There's a lot of Volvos. Volvos and Saabs were the main thing of all the people around there because of all the snow we get. We have horrible winters, right? And therefore, you need a car that's really capable in it. And a Volvo was one of those amazing winter cars. But look at here. We have this, and then we have a lot of people say the male symbol, but actually, this is, I think, one of the alternate symbols for iron or something like that. But no way. There's never been an arrow on the Volvo thing. It even looks dumb. It looks added in, actually. Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola with a hash. Sex and the city, sex in the city. These are weird things. Look over here with Ford. The little curly Q, not the curly Q. Volkswagen was most certainly one thing, but now it's separated, et cetera, et
Yep.
cetera. It's not just the Mona Lisa. It's a lot of little subtle weird things, and even the changes we see don't make sense and they don't look right. Look at this little arrow they've added to Volvo. Let me reiterate that again. I mean, look at it. It doesn't look right. It doesn't
Wait,
belong there,
yes, that's wrong.
right? I mean, it's just it's tons. It's so much. This is so deep. But anyway, Thundero, go ahead, continue.
Okay. All right. So what I wanted to talk about as far as in the Mandela effect, there's many, obviously, like he said, so deep. There's probably thousands of examples of things that have either been changed or people remember them differently. One of the biggest ones to me that
Hmm.
cinched it to me that there's something more to this than just false memories is the Lindbergh baby. Charles Lindbergh, one of the most famous Americans to ever live, his child was kidnapped from his home and murdered. Well, That's the story now. That's what our timeline records as now. The child was kidnapped from the home, murdered. They found the child a few days later, I think like 10 days later, something like that effect. Found a man, tried him, gave him, it was about a month the trial went on. He was convicted and then executed. Very quickly, the man swore he was innocent the entire time. But I don't remember them ever finding anybody, and I don't remember them ever finding a body of the baby. In fact, and I'm not alone in this, there's millions of people who have this same memory. I remember this being one of the great unsolved crimes
Yep.
of the 20th century.
Yeah, I actually
Um,
remember a show on Unsolved Mysteries, them talking about the
yes,
mystery of the Limber baby, actually.
correct. Yep, and there's, in fact, I think somebody might have found a clip of that somewhere, if I remember correctly. I saw it on a YouTube video at one point. But this at the time was an event in this country. I mean, it was a 9/11 level event. Like everybody was talking about it because
Yeah,
everybody knew who Charles Lindbergh was.
yeah,
Yeah.
And it was, JFK assassination level. Like every single person knew who Charles Lindbergh was. They knew about this baby missing. So that is why you have, when people say they remember it completely differently from what they were told. Obviously, I wasn't alive then; it was in the 30s. But people who remember it completely different from what they were told and what they were literally told by authoritative sources. Like documentaries or TV episodes of TV shows, or just reading it in encyclopedias or whatever, is completely different from what the official record has now. I never heard of this gentleman. Where does his name go? This gentleman, Richard Hapman, at all
no,
until I started looking into this a few years ago, and I was like, "What? No, they never
Yeah.
They never found a guy who did
yeah,
this. That
and,
was the
and
whole point. That's why it's so mysterious."
that's right. And once that, and then reiterate that, because if it was just a celebrity had lost their baby, it's sad news and it goes into a footnote, right? But
Right.
it has persisted for so long because it was a mystery. And if you solve that mystery so quickly, instantly, like you had mentioned that they supposedly did, then why is it still being talked about? It doesn't make any sense,
Exactly.
right? A
So
lot of these are nonsensical.
this makes me want to go back and dig a board game out of my closet because in the game 221 Baker Street, the Time Machine edition, in
Uh-huh.
which you portray like Sherlock Holmes and you go throughout time solving mysteries. This is one of the mysteries in that game. And
Yep.
the reason why it's one of the mysteries in the game is because they always invent. There was always a fictitious actual reason for that event, right? So you're not really solving the real thing. You're solving what a writer has decided this would be interesting. We're going to make some clues. It's going to pertain to the event, and then you're going to find out this. And then, of course, there's a winner to the game. And they chose this one obviously because it was already open ended. They whatever they made up, it was a possibility because it
Yeah.
wasn't solved. So now I got to go see what the game has to say about this particular event because there's always a little blurb about you know the real event versus the in game concept.
And by the way, a great board game reference, dude. Bowing to you. That is awesome. That is
Thank you.
awesome, dude. That is awesome. But
It's interesting, because if there is actually even a website called MandelaEffect.com. I'll post a link to it. I'm sure they don't care. Oh, and they have a section about the Lindbergh baby. They don't really have much on it. This one, it's mostly just people's comments. But it's very interesting how many people have the same memory that I have, and that it seems Chester has, in
yeah,
that this was an unsolved mystery. I think just a few years ago they had a thing on the History Channel trying to solve it. Like I swear I remember that.
yeah.
I'd have to look. Um, and now all of a sudden, I don't know when it was, probably in the last year or two, it's been solved. We know who did it. This is what happened. Blah blah. They can case by boom 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 boom. But there's no way. There's no way it would still be
No.
talked about this heavily if it was just a famous person who lost their kid.
Well, see, a lot of people, when you watch these Mandela Effect things, which are, like I said before, the reason we're doing this show is because we love conspiracy theories. It's great fun, right? That's what we're going
Hmm.
about here, and I enjoy it. I don't really care whether they're true or not. I just enjoy the entertainment of it, right? But the Mandela Effect thing, a lot of them are the people will argue the point that no, I remember, I remember, I remember, and that's what they stick to. But I mean, I can say I remember all I want, but what does that mean to you? It means nothing. But if I look at it more and say, well, logically this doesn't make sense because of A, B, and C, well, this is a much better
Hmm.
way to approach it. Like just like we did, the Lindbergh baby doesn't make any sense unless it is an unsolved mystery. It just doesn't.
Right.
And
There's
Eric
even
Boyd,
there's
eh,
even go ahead one sec. There's even TV shows like The Simpsons. There's a throwaway line in there where one of them says, where Grandpa Simpson says, "I was the Lindbergh baby." Well, that
yeah,
doesn't make any sense if they found the dead body.
yep,
It only
that's
makes
right.
sense as if it was a mystery. Nobody
That's
ever found the
exactly
baby.
right. That's exactly true. Yeah, The Simpsons did that, and we know how weird The Simpsons are. You can do a whole TFT on The Simpsons themselves.
Yeah,
You can.
definitely.
Eric Boyd, is it possible people are getting the Lindbergh baby and Amelia Earhart confused with each other in a way? I remember learning the baby had been kidnapped and killed, but I thought more than one person was involved. Well, it's the Amelia Earhart connection. I understand with Lindbergh because he's famous for his was it Spirit of '76 that he flew across the Atlantic, and Amelia Earhart being aviator herself. And of course, recently we've got some good news information. Recently, we think we've actually found what happened to Amelia, but that's a whole nother conversation. It's not related to this, but I don't think so, dude, because a missing baby has nothing to do with a missing pilot. I don't see how they could confuse that. And like I said, once again, it doesn't make sense that we would still be talking about nearly 100 years later the Lindbergh baby unless it was something fantastical. Whereas it's an unsolved situation. It just doesn't make sense. It would be a footnote. I mean, it
Right.
simply would. I mean, I
I mean,
think there
let's
was.
think about it. Think about it this way. Think about it this way. I'm only 34 years old. Why would I know about something from 1934 that was basically a celebrity lost their kid? You know how many celebrities have probably lost kids between 1934 and
Yeah.
now, but yet I know this one? Why do I
Yeah,
know this one? Well, I know this one because it was supposedly never solved.
that's right.
That's why I know this one.
And I do believe that there was another famous celebrity who lost a kid. I forget exactly how, but I'm sure no one remembers it now because it wasn't nothing but just simply a standard death of a child. But I'm pretty sure Teddy Roosevelt lost a kid, didn't he?
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, I'm not
I
100%
think
sure.
you're
Is
right
it
on that.
Teddy or is it one of the other ones? But
I'm pretty sure it was one of the Roosevelts. Yeah.
yeah, but so once again, no one remembers that. Because it's just it's sad, but it's not something that's going to persist through history. But this is a perfect example of the weirdness of the Mandela effect because it's nonsensical, right? Hmm.
Now, Thundero, I went to the History Channel, and according to them, Bruno Hauptmann was the man that uh, had the money. So who's this Richard person?
Well, that's just who Wikipedia says. In September 1934, a German immigrant carpenter named Richard Hauptmann was arrested for the crime after a trial that lasted from January 2nd to
Oh,
February
okay. So
13th. Yeah, he was found
maybe it's just a
guilty,
name difference.
and it looks like he was executed in
Like
1936. So he was only on death row for about a year. According to this, he insisted he was innocent the entire time, that it had never happened.
Yeah, Eric is continuing with his thoughts on this. I get what you're saying, dude. I get what you're saying, and these things are certainly possible. But let me add another little layer onto Lindbergh that I think will add more light to the situation. You got to keep in mind that Lindbergh was a legendary guy, a pilot, because it was a time of aviation where new things were happening. These days, nothing new happens unless you're a flat earther, right? But this guy, Lindbergh, was incredibly famous. But yet, in the 30s and coming into the 40s, he was disavowed. Why? Because he was good friends with Adolf Hitler, because he was a proud German, right? He's actually a German, right? And
Yeah.
he was living in America because he was famous and it was a good place to live and such. But he was very supportive of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis and all that kind of stuff. And he was completely disavowed because of his relation and connection to that. But yet, here we are, all these years later, still talking about the Lindbergh baby, even though he technically was thrown out of American history. So that's another point, right? And
Yep.
look
Yeah,
at this little. Yeah, go ahead.
he's been largely blacklisted. No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm just bringing up another one just popped up here in that search. We have the Thinker here. Of course, this is very famous. It's been in many movies. It's constantly talked about. But look at the way the Thinker's hand is now and compared to what we know it is, which is with the fist. This doesn't even make sense. Who sits like that? Nobody sits like that.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. What are you doing? Right? That's
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah,
It's
that's a weird one.
nonsensical, right?
Well, then there's other people who say they insist they remember it on his forehead, that he had a fist, a curled up fist with a bent wrist leaning on his forehead, and that was the position of the thinker. There's people who will insist that that's what they remember. They remember seeing that in movies. I think there's even people who found pictures similar to that.
Well,
So
either
it's
way,
interesting.
it's better than this. Either
Yeah,
way, but then
definitely.
again, we have this standard concept in human thought that when you think, you put your chin on your fist, and you contemplate. We don't put it on our head. That is more distress, right? We put it
Hmm.
in our chin, right? So this is a very standard concept. Now, is that coming from simply what humans do, or is this something that this thinker has had such an effect for such a long time that culturally that's how we perceive it? I don't know, but this isn't right. That's craziness. No one does that. It's so odd looking. It's weird. It stands out weird, and something that stands out weird and uncomfortable doesn't become legendary famous like this piece of sculpture is actually. But interesting. The Lindbergh baby. What about you, George? Did you have one you wanted to offer, or are you just kind of hanging on for the ride here?
No, I think I am seeing a pattern to what you guys are talking about now, and it goes to two theories. Well, they're both actually proven scientifically. Theory number one is called the collective unconsciousness,
Hmm.
and which could be the effect here. And the secondly, it's was a genetic knowledge. Meaning, as an example, if you take newborn chicks and you sequester them into a room, and they have no idea what the sun looks like, what or anything else looks like, and then you have a shadow of a hawk uh, beam down into their little pen, they will run and hide. But if you have a shadow of a rabbit or anything else, they will not even think about running and hiding.
Yeah.
So there's genetic memory involved here, or there's a collective unconsciousness involved here that is actually changing our information as we think we know it.
Well, that's taking an assumption there's no nefarious goals involved, which it's possible. It's a theory. And of course, this is ultimately brings us back to the conversation of nurture versus nature, and which has been going on since Egyptian times. They've been arguing this actually, and of course, these days with our science and our ability to look at DNA, the interesting thing about that, George, is the fact that scientists are unwillingly, but yet unfortunately, leaning more and more toward the fact that nature is possibly near 100% over the nurture, meaning your DNA demands and commands what you do far, far more than your environment or your individual choice. Now, we can get into that long argument. I don't know if we want to do it here, but that is falling into that old conversation of nature versus nurture. And I think there's certainly some argument to be had with it, George.
Nice.
It's even older than that, really.
Oh,
It's
probably.
will versus fate. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a rehash of the old
Oh, sure.
philosophical arguments from the Greeks of
Destiny
will
or
versus fate.
fate.
Yeah.
Destiny or fate. Yeah,
Yep.
that's right. That's right. And if you go back to like the oldest histories and religions we have, like the stories in Ireland, the Mesopotamia stories, which are the oldest things we have right now access to, both of those talk about destiny and fate all the time, constantly. I mean, the Sumerian and well, I just call it Mesopotamia because it's a very long historical storytelling there.
Hmm.
But they are constantly talking about destiny and fate. Constantly, they do not shut up about it. Right?
Right. Yep. But anyway,
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting one though. How about you, DeWolf? Which one would you like me to bring up for you?
Actually, I'm doing a little bit of checking on one. So let's move forward. You mentioned well, actually, I think what was the chat? The chat mentioned the one about um, Darth Vader,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
which is interesting because he says concrete evidence. And actually, here's a point I wanted to make about this first before we go actually towards that, and that is the fact that part of this Mandela effect problem is memories of people are also not the same, because I believe, because pop culture after the fact says one thing sometimes when the actual media says another. That Luke, I am your father concept, right? Because I actually have more of a memory of the no Luke, I'm your father. And when you talk about pop media, right, there's the play it again, Sam. Well, he never says play it again, Sam. He just says play it, Sam. The again isn't in there. It's just that
Mhm.
through the usage of like Bob Hope and stuff like that, the again was put in there later on. That becomes now a pop reference, and we repeat it over and over again. So what I want to know is if there's this so-called concrete reference that he says, Luke, I am your father, and what is that?
Yeah, well, and now, we I mentioned that the fact that James Earl Jones himself talks about in interviews, which I've seen them recently from in connection to the Mandela effect, where he's sitting there talking about the moment that he said, "Luke, I am your father," because it's such a poignant, powerful moment in the movie with his amazing voice and gravitas, and he's talking about it. He's kind of a goofy guy in the interview, actually. It's interesting, James Earl Jones. And of course, if you've seen him on The Big Bang Theory, you know why. But he says himself, he's just sitting there talking about that moment. He said, "Luke, I am your father." I mean, it's very clear. So somehow he doesn't know the lines, which is weird.
Well, in James Earl Jones' case, it could be the Lucas effect instead of the Mandela effect, because Lucas has been tinkering with the movies so much so that
It's true.
uh, the initial release of Star Wars got tinkered, and one year into it was in 1978 when it was still available in theaters. There was a second or third version of it, with slight changes here and there and stuff like that. Yeah, no, I believe that's a Lucas effect. He
It could
probably
be.
went in there
It could
and
be. But you
changed
have
stuff without even knowing.
you have to understand though, this is where the really weird thing of the Mandela effect comes in, George. We haven't touched on it yet. So let me touch on it now that you mentioned that. Having the idea, one of the theories is that Google has these big old, fourth dimensional computers, which are just, the scientists that know these things are terrified of, because these things have already passed us in intelligence and ability. They're way beyond us now, and it's like it's got to the point that every few weeks they're taking another leap above us consistently. So these, I think they call them actually 60 or quantum computers, that people are suggesting that Google is changing stuff for some reason, right? And it's just across the internet. And of course, that would be well enough. We're like, all right, these jackasses are changing stuff, and that's that. But the problem is, people have taken out old VHSs from the 80s of Star Wars, and he doesn't say, "Luke, I'm your father." This is the problem. The old stuff is not matching up with what our memories are. And that's why this is a thing. Because if it was simply Google just changing stuff because they can or for whatever purpose they might have, like you said, trying to deconstruct a concept, but that would be one thing enough and it'd be done. This wouldn't be a conspiracy theory. It wouldn't be a conversation. But the fact that old stuff is showing that it has been changed, but yet it has been in people's possession for decades, that's the problem. This is where the Mandela effect becomes really strange because we all remember, including the dude who spoke the words, that Luke, I am your father, very clearly, but yet the old VHSs show that no, he never said that.
I think there's even an interview somewhere of George Lucas himself saying it. Um,
Possible. Yeah,
of saying it, the way that everybody says they remember it. So it's very strange. I swear I've seen that too. I'd have to find it, but pretty sure that there is one on one of the, because they've done a million different releases of the original trilogy.
yeah, they have.
On one of them, there was like a an interview thing or whatever, a commentary, whatever it's called, and he says, when he was coming up with that line, and then he says the line, um, he wanted to make sure that only a few people in the production knew it, right? Because he wanted to keep it a secret.
Sure.
Um,
That's true. Yeah.
so it's very strange. It's a very strange one because it's one that there's no point to it. What could possibly be the point of changing a movie line that largely doesn't really matter the way he says it?
Right.
The point's still conveyed, but
Well,
why do it?
this comes back to the collective unconsciousness, where um, we're okay. Or let me put it another way: forget the collective unconsciousness. Let's call it the telephone effect, where one person says something, the next person says it, repeats it, and so forth. By that time, it will change.
Yes, George,
So
but if I'm the first person in the line of the telephone game, then it doesn't change. And in this case,
no,
I'm the first person in line because I remember the line very clearly because I watched the movie when I was little. And you do keep in mind as well that the Star Wars used to be culturally important. It's not anymore. They went and Disney went and
Yeah.
murdered the hell out of it. But it used to be culturally important. When Star Wars did something,
Yep.
especially Empire of the Strikes Back, my goodness, dude, Star Wars was a mega mammoth thing, and everyone was so anticipating Empire Strikes Back. And of course, it was a better movie, actually. And when that came out, and it had such big effects, and the quotable quotes from that movie, when the most quotable quote from that movie is Luke, I am your father, not no, I am your father. No, it doesn't even feel as cool. Why would it strike? I mean, yeah, the moment that,
yeah,
oh, we know Darth Vader's his father, but that line is stuck. And like, I understand what you're saying about the telephone game, and there's many applications of that analogy. But in this case, we are all the first one in the line for that game, dude, because we saw
yeah,
it.
yeah. Just off topic, can we take a moment to remember Star Wars
Yes.
and rest?
Give you a moment of silence for the once great cultural icon.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Ah, excuse me.
silence. It's it's sad. It's a sad world that we
It
live
is.
in.
Well, dude, I can
It
see the
is.
I can see the sadness in the Dark Father right here.
Yes.
I can see it.
Yes. And actually, when you think about it, now that I think about it, it actually, you're right. It doesn't make much sense because when he was doing that, he's trying to turn Luke. So why
Hmm.
wouldn't he personalize it? Why wouldn't he call him by
Yeah.
name? Come to me. He's basically saying, "Come to me, son. Please come." He's basically asking him to come with it, begging him to come with him.
Yeah.
Um, so why wouldn't he personalize it? I mean, he's a pretty good manipulator. You'd think he would know how to personalize a thing like that. So it would make more sense for him to say Luke than it would just to say no very harshly.
Yeah. And we're not really covering a lot of the little quirky things like Pikachu having a different having no black on his tail now, and the Berenstein Bears, and Jiffy, and Fruit Loops, and Captain
He
Crunch,
has
and
no black on his tail now?
no, no, never was, dude. What are you talking about, crazy person? And that's the thing. It's like you're a crazy person. What are you thinking, right?
It's funny as you say these things. I'm thinking, wait, what? I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, well, there's tons of them, dude. There's
Oh,
so many of them. That's what I mean. This thing is way too deep for us to do in a single show.
Well, there's another one because DeWolf had brought up, scripture. There's biblical ones.
Yes, there
There's
are
things
a
in the
lot.
Bible that people are certain have been changed.
Let me
Most
ask.
of them aren't.
Let
Most of
Oh
them
yeah,
aren't huge things, but they exist.
let,
oh
let
yeah. The big one out of the Bible, I can tell you right now, is God helps those who help themselves. And every time I have there's a conversation on that quote alone, they said, "Yeah, that's in the Bible." I said, "No, that was Benjamin Franklin who said it. Not
Yeah.
it's not in the Bible."
Yeah, George.
No,
But
there's other
let
ones
let
too.
me ask you a simple little question. The Bible has radically been changed, actually. And
Yes.
let me ask you a simple question. Who does the lion lay down with?
The lion lay
Yeah,
down with.
yeah.
Oh shoot, Androcles and the lion.
Oh, goodness gracious. DeWolf, who lays down with the lion?
wow. Well, classically, it's been said that the lion will lay down with the lamb.
That's right. And now, of course, in the Bible, it doesn't say that at all. And you go look at your Bible right now, you could find out. He doesn't say the Bible doesn't say anything about lions and lambs. It says wolves and lambs.
Yep. Sure does. There's even songs. I used to sing them in church all the time
Yep,
about the lion and the lamb.
that's right.
There's merchandise from 150 years ago talking about the lion and the lamb when it
Yep.
wasn't as easy to produce. So if they messed up, it was a real big problem. But yet, when you go and look up the verse now, which the number where it is escapes me. I want to say it's in the Old Testament in Isaiah. Um, it definitely says the wolf will lay down with the lamb, or the
That's right.
wolves will lay
They've been
down with the
changed.
lamb.
The Bible is a huge Mandela effect, dude. Give
Yes.
me, tell me the Lord's Prayer, DeWolf. Now,
Our
now
Father
I
who art
lay
in
me down to sleep. I pray the
heaven.
Lord.
Wait, what?
The Lord's Prayer.
No, that's not the Lord's prayer.
Well, then tell me what it is.
Yeah, our Father who art in heaven,
Oh, that one. Yeah. Okay. Got it.
hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, will be done. Yeah.
Now,
Um,
if you go look at it now,
I
it's very different, and it's you know what? It's different in an SJW way too. That's the interesting thing
Oh
about the
no.
Bible
what?
changes. It's
Now
very
I gotta look this up.
SJW changes, dude. Yeah.
Damn.
But yes, there are changes even to that level
Yeah.
of things that every. I mean, there is no book in the Western world more important, more
No.
impactful than the Bible. Even if you don't believe it, it's
Even
still
historically,
you
dude.
know of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know of it, and you know enough of it to know when you're hearing about the Bible, right?
Yeah.
You know, everybody knows John 3:16. They
That's
they know
right.
just that name and number combination. They know that.
And even if you're a type of person who wants to argue it's nothing but a bunch of man-made propaganda, it doesn't change
Yep.
the fact that the Bible is absolutely the most important book ever written.
Yeah, you
Yes.
know what? I just have to make a one statement about
I'm
the
not seeing that one.
is that I'm really sad that there's so many variations of it. The international version, the this version, that version. They can't just stick with one,
Um,
scripture.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I get where you're heading with that, George. But you can go online and check out Mandela Effect in the Bible, and what they're doing is the King James. They're sticking to the
Yes.
King James, and there are literally hundreds and hundreds of changes in the Bible, and some of them are very odd changes, but they're often very political changes, actually. And this is the one that
Yep.
really brings your hackles up because it's like obviously some political attack. But the problem is that we have people who I can't remember his name offhand, but there's a couple of really good sites that cover the Bible really well from the Mandela Effect, and they are very disturbed because these people are ones that do every day read the Bible. I mean, every day they'll read
Yep.
verses. They're that
Well,
type of person.
here's a problem because I found the Lord's Prayer. I
Uh,
typed it in online, and I read through it, and it's the same as I remember it.
well, yeah, but then if you keep searching it, maybe it isn't the same. Remember, or maybe you're one of the people that remember it that way, and other people remember a different way. Read it
Right.
off to me. Read it
And
off to me.
it's something like that.
Well,
Before he does that, it's something like that. That is something that, especially when you're younger, a lot of people they have that driven into them. Like quite literally, you say it all the time, all the
Yeah.
time, all the time. Um, so it's very interesting that people are saying now they remember a different version of it because that's near impossible with the way the human brain works. If something's that driven into you, you will remember it eventually. Even if no matter how dumb or smart you are, if you have intelligence above that of 80, you will remember things through repetition. Guaranteed.
right. Which is
Yeah,
why, as we're doing this, I decided to type in Mandela Effect, Robotech, and Macross
Oh
because
no.
because if there's anything that I know backwards and forwards, it's that, and I haven't found any references. So I'm gonna have to go look for something else that because I know my memory on that's gonna be pretty reliable. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah. But actually, Dulf, you might be interested to look into the conversation about the Mandela effect in the Bible. It is interesting, and it's a bit. It actually is kind of disgusting from my point of view, and you know that I'm not. I'm more of a intelligent design guy, and it's mainly because of all the study I've done and stuff like that. But I respect people's right to religion, and I don't like it when people go and mess with other people's religion, no matter what it is. And
Well, that's
you should,
interesting.
yeah.
It's interesting you use the word. I don't like when people go and mess with people's religion because that will become a big topic as we get into the later part of this when we talk about the who's and the whys and the
Yes.
wherefores of the Mandela effect.
Yeah.
But this leads me to another idea. Is there any other Mandela effects going on in any other cultures, including like maybe Taoists with the Tao?
Well, now it's interesting you say that because I have seen channels from India, and I have seen channels from Jordan and Israel, and I've also seen some channels in China that are into the Mandela effect and are talking about it from their point of view. Now, I haven't done a deep dive, so I don't know how many other cultures are involved, but just offhand, I've seen those three, right? And so yeah, other cultures are noticing it. Yeah, I don't know how deep it is. I didn't do that kind of level of research, but I have seen it. Yeah. So it's a yeah, that's interesting point. Interesting point. But also like I think, and we're going to get into this, but it's very political, right? Because the Bible is something that science has been wanting to tear down for quite a while. It really started a little bit before Darwin, but Darwin was really kind of a focal point for them, and they have created their own religion about hating Christianity and trying to destroy it. Look at it as it is today, right? We understand that the average Muslim is a nice person. I mean, most people are good because of fear. Fear drives everything we do, right? And you're afraid of getting caught, getting blamed, being pulled out, being focused or singled out, right? So most people in the Muslim cult community are fine. They're good people, right? And even though their book, just like some of the old stories in the Bible, are troublesome stories, in general, they're just good people trying to live a good life, right? But yet we know that Islam has a big problem because they've had no reformation. And when 27% of your population thinks it's okay to go out and murder the name of Allah with terrorism and stuff like that, that's a problem, right? It's a problem. And but instead of recognizing that problem from the Western press and the Western academia, and saying that okay, well, Islam has a problem they need to deal with, instead of doing that, they say no, Islam is the most amazing thing ever. Christianity are evil, right? That's how absolutely broken they are. And this Mandela effect, particularly how it affects the Bible, I think is very telling. Because if you go and I've watched quite a few videos actually with people deep diving, I mean, actual Christians who are really knowledgeable about the Bible, deep diving into the changes, and they're disturbing. But uh, you know,
The worst part, real quick, the worst part is even in the original text, it's changed. You can go back. I've seen videos of people reading it in Greek,
mhm,
reading it in Hebrew, reading it in Latin, and it is not the same as what they remembered, as what they've been taught for years and years. Now, this could just be, yeah, they were in a bad church and they taught them wrong, but they
it's
taught
too
everybody
many
wrong.
people,
Everybody
dude.
was reading the book wrong. Like, that's an impressive level of obfuscation, if so.
Well,
I mean, that's
this
like
is
CIA levels of obfuscation.
That's right. But this is also why I mentioned the lion and lamb, because this is a general thing that everyone recognizes because it's been part of our culture forever. I mean, everyone knows the lion
Well,
lays down with the lamb. Everyone knows this,
it
right?
also
Well,
sounds better. It's a
so
better
here's one that we
alliteration.
got to ask. I want to ask George because he can tell us this one. Um, are you George is still with us, right?
I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, I'm here. I'm
There
here.
he is.
I'm
Okay.
here.
So if you were Forrest Gump and you were going to talk about life and chocolate, how would you do that?
Life is a box of chocolates.
No, life is like a box of chocolates,
There you go.
but that's not what it is. It's different now.
Is it
It is.
is it still different?
It's still different.
Okay.
They
And
changed
that's
it.
interesting why it's kind of interesting to have someone like George here because if you haven't gone into the Mandela effect, you haven't already been corrupted with either types of different information. So just like I did there, ask the question, what is it? And see what the memory is, right? Um, that's one of the better ways I think to go about this these days
Did you
when
know that
you're
Jesus had
introducing
seven
someone
horns?
to the idea.
Did you know
So
that Jesus had seven horns? Did you know that?
thought it was Moses.
Yeah, well, Moses had two, I think, but now Jesus has seven.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is a very
Okay.
fascinating thing, and I think the Bible dive one. I think if we did some bit of research and prepared ourselves, we could have a really interesting conversation with that. But I think it's also probably a bit sensitive one. I find it very irritating that these things are going on. But let's go to something a little bit more frustrating. How about that? Let's go deeper. Here's my offer for today: maps. Now, Hmm. This one is the most,
Union
for me,
maps.
it's the most disturbing part of the Mandela effect, actually, because I personally, we can each focus on what we know most, right? And in the Mandela effect, yeah, sure, Berenstain Bears, Looney Tunes, sure, I have memories and stuff like that, but cartography and geography is something that I have studied extensively in my life. I've spent a lot of my life studying maps. It's just a love of mine. It's part of my university studies and et cetera, et cetera. So this is something I know quite a bit about, actually, and therefore I feel most comfortable talking about. Because here's the thing: they have changed the maps, and in not subtle ways, right? Let's take a look here. Here is a map. Right. Oh no, let's go to this one here. Well, it's way too small. That is way too small. All right. Let's come over to this one. This no, it's way too small too. Hold on a second. All right.
Anyone? I'm the map.
Wow,
I'm the
dude.
map. Anybody?
Here we go. All right. Now, that's not going to help me. Oh, goodness gracious. This is a little bit better. All right, here we go. Now, if we take a look at this map, right? This has nothing to do with the Mandela effect. Actually, this is just showing the actual size of Greenland, and this has to do with the Mercator projection. The Mercator projection stretches things at the top and shrinks things at the middle. Therefore, I think many of us know this. Therefore, the map doesn't really have a really good assessment of how the size. Greenland is nowhere near that size. You can see down here in Africa, it's that big. But this is a completely separate topic, but interesting unto itself. But if we come over here and we take a look at South America, sorry, I had to explain that. We come over here to South America. We see that South America has, where say Chile, right, is sitting just south of, say, Maine, right? Just south of Maine is the way they have it set up now. But the thing is, when I was a kid, and the maps and the stuff I studied, actually, even when I wasn't a kid, South America and Chile particularly was sitting under California, right? And very clearly so. Here's another map that's looking at it like that, right? And because I even recall my teacher helping us to remember and stuff like that, talking about the relationship of California to Chile, right? Which is why I mentioned that specifically. But this is a very odd thing, right? Because how that's what is that? That's thousands of miles moved. That's what 2,500, 2,300 miles to the east. That's a radical shift. And I remember very clearly because I studied it. Look at this one over here. Look at this. Sri Lanka is now to the right of India, where it was always sitting on the left, right? We have the Australian one. People remember it up here, down here, what have you, but it's certainly not this way far south position that it was sitting in. Very odd. Let me get into one I think that is because I could go on and on and on. There's literally hundreds of map changes that have been done, and I'm going to show you one, and then I'm going to talk about a radical concept. Let me see here. Let's just do a simple search for Gibraltar. I probably didn't spell that right. I did. Yay.
Now, 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 I believed that the Rock of Gibraltar was at the very tip of of Spain,
Yes.
right? And it was kind of
Yes.
actually maybe even off the coast, right? There was a little bit of a gap.
Well, if we look here, for instance, they're showing Gibraltar is off to the tip, but it's showing directly down, right? And this is an interesting one because the reason I'm mentioning this one particularly is because we look at this map, right? Or that one down there probably would have been easier for us to see. Where was that one again? But anyway, you can see right here that you have this gap in between, and Gibraltar sitting up there, and of course the pillars of Gibraltar is part of the pillars of Hercules, right? And you see it's in the perfect position. But here's the thing that's interesting about this Mandela effect point is for a while, for many years, actually. They on maps and stuff, they had Gibraltar sitting way over here, way to the east. It was over here. They had Gibraltar. If you can see where my mouse is, they had it on the maps over here. And of course, that was wrong. And everyone was like, "What the hell are you doing?" And now all of a sudden, Gibraltar's back where it should be. Right. So here is a showing of a Mandela effect that has changed and changed. And then you have people saying, "Well, it's on my map this way, and then it's on that map that way, and now it's back." Literally, right? So the Gibraltar is a very interesting one for me because it demonstrates a weird shifting that's going on with the Mandela effect. Because look right here, you get a really good look of it, and you can see that these are the pillars of Hercules, right? Right. But it's
Yeah.
very strange, right? Now,
Yes,
um,
it's a very strange one. There's a few others that have reverted. It seems. I can't remember some of them offhand now that I just think of it, but there's a couple others that have gone from one way back to another, back to the other. In fact, I
yeah,
think I remember people talking about the Vader one doing that a few years ago, and now it seems to be more the consensus is the no Luke or the no I'm your father instead of the Luke I'm your father. So it's very interesting to watch
it
as
is.
the shifts of the scope of knowledge on this.
Now, another interesting little shift because Gibraltar's weird, right? Because for me, or during when I first saw the Mandela effect, I was like, nope, 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 nope. That doesn't even make sense. And now it's back, and it was never changed. People are like, well, we never talked to you about the Gibraltar. Yeah, nonsense, right? So that one is weird because we've seen it go back and forth. Now here in Japan, for instance, which place I live, right? This is very interesting. If we look at Japan and where it's sitting in Asia, look how far north it is. Japan, Hokkaido was sitting around the Korea, because Korea is a very cold weather place, right? And now we have supposedly Hokkaido is sitting way up here in Arctic levels, but yet the Hokkaido is not that cold. It's not. It's more South Korea cold, right? And South Korea has brutal winters, as does Hokkaido. But of course, most of Japan, especially where I live, is extremely tropical, right? But look where we're sitting. We're sitting in North China with Kyushu, where I'm living, sitting in North China, north of Shanghai, right? And if we come across, this is going to put us over somewhere in the Carolinas, right, or something like that. But it's a very weird placement. Japan was never this far north; it was always far to the south, and because their relationship with Taiwan is so close, it's almost as if they were the same culture. And most Chinese hate the Japanese, and of course vice versa. Of course, the hate between the Koreans and Japanese is legendary. But the Taiwanese and the Japanese are absolutely buddies, good friends. Right. But now I heard. Now the reason I mention this is because oh well, you just remember wrong. Okay, fine. But there is a concept that has been put out by some very interesting Mandela Effect people, that they have shown maps that demonstrate Japan being much further south, older maps. But they also demonstrate that the reason they think that Japan has been moved, they literally believe that Japan has been moved somehow, because of the nuclear bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki had caused such damage that they needed to get that out of the way so that Japan could be vital again. And therefore, they're actually showing, they go to such lengths and depths where they go down here around Taiwan and they look in the bottom, they find these in the ocean, and they find these anchor points, which are very odd looking because it looks like something has literally been. This isn't a good one because it's not showing that, but it literally looks like Japan has been dragged across the seabed. And this has been demonstrated, I'm not saying I believe it. I'm just saying that wow, man, talk about how deep the Mandela effect can go. That people are going to that level to try to understand this thing that is confusing them, and
Uh,
you know,
I put in the chat, the Hangouts chat, a link to a JPEG that you can bring up for everybody to see on
okay,
YouTube and here. It's called the Accurate Map of the World, and have a look at it because it will add to what you're saying.
Well, it's
Ooh.
also interesting because now that you mention it, that right there, that doesn't look right to me. Japan looks too far north,
way
and it
far
looks too
north.
close. to the mainland. Actually, it should be out a little bit more and down a little bit more, maybe about
Mhm.
20 degrees each direction, and then it would feel right to me because I don't remember Korea and Japan being like right on top of each other. And from that picture, they are. They're
They
like
are,
right
yeah.
next. I mean, you could almost walk across it if it was frozen. So it's very interesting to see these strange what appear to be changes in the way we view the world and the
Mhm.
way the world is literally structured.
Now, that is an interesting map you brought up, George. But another one, I'm just the easiest way to find it is just flat Earth map. Although it's not actually a flat Earth map. This is an old map. It's just simply an Arctic centered map. But the easiest way to find it is this way. But if you take a look at this map, this is actually my favorite style of map, just for maps. It has nothing to do with flat Earth, because it really gives us a very good understanding of the world, and how it portrays, how it lays out. And of course, that's why the United Nations uses it, is because it really demonstrates the world around a non-center, because there's nothing in the Arctic, so it's kind of
Just
neutral.
just remember, everybody. Chester's admitted he's one of them. He's covering up the conspiracy.
I am not.
Now, is it due to the fact that you are such an avid board game player and you've looked at the map of Axis and Allies for so long?
Ooh, dude, that is another layer added onto it. Yeah, well,
And
it is.
just
But
because,
no.
and I got there because I started while you were talking, I started googling Japan invades China, right? Because if there's anything that's going to be documented well, that's going to be concepts of war, World War II and stuff like that. And Japan did, they invaded the mainland quite extensively. So how does that affect an invasion when you are a certain distance away from from certain areas? And unfortunately, I didn't come up with anything conclusive there except for the map of Axis and Allies. So
Well, yeah, but then take a look at what we're looking at then. Let's go back to that and that concept. Now, where Japan is sitting now is sitting off of the basically Manchu area, right? We have Mongolia, we have the northern frozen tundra of China sitting over here, and all the power of China is sitting down here. Now, Beijing would be very near to Tokyo here, but all this power, especially, I don't know if you guys understand the history of China very well, but even though the Mongols, when Chinggis Khan and of course Kublai, they of course put their center more to the top because they're Mongolians. But the historical China and the power of China has always been in the south, right? From Shanghai down. Right. And of course, most of their mobilization and everything they do is in this kind of round area here down in China. This is China proper, as it says right here. You got West China, which has always been a weird frontier land. Lots of stories of mystery and almost like the dragon or the serpent in the sea. The West China has all that stuff. The journey into mystery, of course, not journey in mystery, a journey to the West. Sorry, which is of course the staple for Buddhism. Talks about the weird mystery of this land. But this China proper here, this center area, this is where everything goes on because that's where the Yellow River is, of course, and we know the ancient cultures built upon rivers. So if you're looking at this interaction, it's not a big deal. They can come on over here to Kyushu, no problem. But we do know that most of the Chinese interaction, actually, if you look at my mouse over here, is on this northern arc just above Tokyo. Actually, and not saying that Tokyo was, because Tokyo is a new capital from Edo time. So for 400 years, the capital has been there. It used to be over in Kyoto and Osaka, etc. But they used to interact over here in this northern part. Now, if you look at that, that's kind of weird. We're sailing over, we're coming all the way past the strait, and we're coming all the way back. Why don't we just stop in Kyushu? Right? It doesn't make sense. Right? Because, but if you
Hmm.
take Japan and move it down, well, then you'll see that this Shanghai area and this central coast of China, it's slap dab into that area. It's a direct shot, right? So even that concept you're putting up right there helps my point because it doesn't
oh
make
yeah.
sense, dude.
Also, Vladivostok, how close the Russian border
Yeah, there's
is interesting.
it is like it's Russia, right? And it's just weird. I just mentioned these two for because there's many. I literally could take hours going across the map, right? But those two are very interesting. Gibraltar because it's changed twice. right? And Japan is too far north. And the fact that the extreme nature of the Mandela effect, where people desperate to try to come up with a solution, they've actually even got to the point of trying to show drag marks on the seabed of the ocean, showing a continent, or excuse me, a giant island being moved. That is extreme levels, and they've gone at it
That's
hardcore to prove it. Actually,
yeah, that's nuts.
it's nuts. Yeah,
That people would go to that level. Um, it that's one of the reasons that adds credibility to it, in my opinion, because if it was just misremembering, this many people misremembering the same thing, okay, that's possible. It's unlikely, but it's possible. Would people really go to that level? Would they really go to the length to keep their self convinced of a misremembered thing? I don't think they would. I think we misremember things all the time. We've all done it. Especially if you're married, you've probably misremembered things your wife told you.
sure.
Um, is not really that big of a deal, right? You move on. You think the record gets corrected or whatever, and you move on. But for these specific for some of these specific things, and there's a couple of them that are even darker. Um, it's interesting how deep people entrench themselves into it, and it's because they're so certain. It's not like you're not sure, you have doubts. These people are 100%. Is It's the same as if you told them their skin color just changed. They would argue with you to the end because they know that what they saw. Their memory is that, and they've seen maps, and there's things that don't make sense, like Chester's pointed out, just logistically, right?
Yeah.
Because humans are a very logistic species. That's what drives our civilization. Is what makes the most sense from point A to point B. Now, the answer to that changes with our technological advancement and things and our knowledge. But when you're looking at things like traversing waterways and seas, that's pretty much always been the same. What makes the most sense? How do you get from point A to point B?
Straight
Um,
line.
yeah, you go in as straight a line as possible. And the reason you do that is because, well, one, it's faster, and two, when you're on the ocean, if you turn too much, you can get lost real quick. Not so much today, but back in the day, easily you could get lost if you turned a few degrees at the wrong time. So things like that make sense when you think about why it's so important to people. And obviously, I think it's probably important to Japanese people because they feel violated, that they feel like their land has been altered without their consent.
Well, most Japanese have no conception of it. I've actually said, "Don't you think it's weird?" Like, no, they don't even realize it actually. But that's not
Ah,
strange for
it's
the
crazy.
Japanese. They're not aware. They're not an aware people. They're just
It's a
not.
shame.
Yeah. They're very
It's a
Well,
shame.
intelligent.
They
They're very
say,
highly trained. They're very disciplined. They're very peaceful. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But they're not aware.
okay, there's a couple of things here that I see. One is that, in lack of a better description, it could be the social justice warrior attitude, where regardless of the information that you're presented, you'll always try to force your thinking
Hmm.
to make it a reality. And that's a scenario that's constant in the human condition.
That's right.
The other thing, the other thing is there is another human condition, and I will describe it to you as an example. If I say to you a long-winded paragraph, each and every one of you will pick a narrative out of that paragraph and hold on to it and that's your takeaway from what I've said. What is going on is the perception of what I am saying is being altered by you instinctively without you even knowing it. So when I'm having a conversation or an argument, I'm just going to throw this out there as an example. I'm having an argument with my wife. I say, you know what? I don't like the fact that the potatoes are being cooked in the frying pan. They should be cooked in the skillet. My wife will take away from that. She's saying, you don't like the way I cook? Oh, no. See, she's able to pick only that one piece of information and hold on to it and argue her point on just that, but not what I'm actually trying to say.
Hmm.
And you can take this example
sure.
into anything, into any interaction at all. So when I'm talking to you, Chester, I'm talking to anybody else. If someone's not thinking analytically, they're thinking with feeling, they will pull. a piece of information out of that conversation and hold on to it, and that is your narrative. That
Yeah,
is what you're going to be talking back to me.
that's a
And
fair point. Yeah.
in this case, it looks like there's a whole this Mandela effect. It looks like as more and more that we're talking about, it looks like it's a confluence, or it was a convergence of multiple scenario or multiple effects converging onto memory.
Yep. Well, and let's get into that actually, which is kind of where we
Yeah, I
are
was
in the
gonna say
show.
that too. Yeah.
With that said, George, that brings us to the next point. Thank you very much. And of course, why? Now, I'm going to cover the main consensus why amongst the Mandela people. It comes down to two main things. Now, there's many theories. We've mentioned a couple along the way, but these are the main ones. There's a big eye being focused on CERN and what they're doing over there, thinking that they have caused some kind of issue. And the other one is talking about this D-wave quantum computers that Google has two of, and CERN has several. They're the only
That's
ones in the
not what I
world.
remember.
What do you remember?
It was a joke.
Oh,
Sorry.
I see, I see. But anyway, so these quantum computers are a big issue. There's a lot of content online you can find about them. And of course, CERN has been a questionable thing for quite a while because there are many scientists in the world that protested heavily the creation and turning on of this crazy thing because they're really worried that it's going to cause harm. Right. And maybe that's just a little bit of panic effect why people have taken on. But the general concept of the Mandela effect is this. They think that in 2012, remember the big worry that the world was going to come to an end, and that the Mayan calendar or what have you. Well,
Yeah.
that the world did end. In order to save us, they had to take parallel Earths and shunt them together. Thus, the Mandela effect, right? And I don't know if
Yep.
we've mentioned it online or not, but there's also a growing community of people who are saying that they're missing family members, meaning
Yeah.
there's no record of wives or children. There's none. They're just crazy people, but yet they know they had a wife, they know they had children, and they're gone now. And there's a growing support group on the internet for these people. Now that is a super dark, tragic thing, right? If that is any truth to
There's
that.
even there's even people who say they're missing parents. They remember their father in their life. They remember doing this, and this with their father, and now they talk to other people about it, and they say he was never around, or vice versa with the mother. Grandparents, same way. I mean, it gets really deep. Some of these people have had endless amounts of psychiatric evaluation because they think they're going crazy,
Hmm.
and there's nothing wrong with their brain. They're just not. They just have these memories that they can't explain. And there's literally thousands of people with different varying degrees who have said the same thing. They remember having a family member they no longer have, and it's obviously heartbreaking. I mean, it's worse than somebody dying. It's They've been obliterated. They no longer existed.
Well,
um,
I actually
and
saw
you still
one that's
remember it.
deeper
I don't even
than.
know how to deal with that.
Well, I saw one that was deeper than that, dude. There was a guy
Hmm.
who remembers growing up, and I don't know his name, like I didn't do the research for it, but there's one of them that remembers growing up with a family, normal family, mom, dad, and brothers, sisters, all that kind of stuff. But the records show he's an orphan.
Wow.
Right? I mean, it's extreme. And we have
Yeah.
things come up like here where we have these little pictures from these dudes over at CERN. And what is this? They have Bond 1, Mandela. We are happy at CERN. There's been a lot of people look into these pictures that, because I don't know, is CERN actually involved in something or they just saw something to try to make fun and pick on people? Who knows? But,
Right.
uh,
Well, there is
CERN.
one other theory besides just CERN
Mhm.
that I've heard, and that is that history, we did have a time limit, let's say, to existence, to reality on this planet.
Right.
Um, and what it is the moment we discover the atomic bomb, whatever happens after that, we're on a countdown until we nuke ourselves, basically to the end of the world.
Mhm.
And these people have put forth a theory that the reason 2012 stutter bad kept coming up was because that was when the end was supposed to be, and anything after that, the universe doesn't know how to process. So somehow we averted the tragedy that was supposed to happen,
Mhm.
and now we're in this new. existence that wasn't supposed to happen, and that's why things don't make sense like they used to, and why the world seems to be going crazy. That's another reason people have given for it, is that we're in a state of existence as a planet that isn't supposed to exist.
So basically, we're in an undiscovered country.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
That would make sense in terms of historical sense. Why? Because humanity is a pattern species. We live our life in a microcosm, but in a macrocosm, we repeat ourselves. Humanity repeats itself constantly. Um, Wars, social upheaval, the whole enchilada. All this can be, you can trace all this back constantly throughout history. So if we're outside of the pattern that's going to be repeating itself, that in itself is a tremendous stress on the common unconsciousness in humanity.
It can be.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they theorize, is that we're in a place where we weren't supposed to be as a existing being, a consciousness, whatever you want to call it. And because of that, that's why you see the world going crazy. Like, people are literally going nuts out there. I remember, just if you would have went back 10 years ago and told people what the world would look like today as far as the things that are being pushed politically, they would have never believed you. They would have said, you're insane, you're nuts, you're crazy.
To have an abortion 9 months in, I mean,
Yeah.
that in itself is like, that is just pure 100% sick science fiction horror story.
It is.
Yes.
Before this year, it would have been a sick science fiction horror story, and this year made it a reality. That is just how crazy we're moving into the reality.
And I would also say that the people of CERN have a very strange sense of humor, because their symbol, as which I'm showing right here, they put 3 6s in their logo, and they
Yeah.
got Shiva sitting out in front of their place. So these guys got a weird sense of humor, at least.
And they also they were doing ceremonies which were basically
Yes.
looked like demonic ceremonies,
Yes,
to be
they
honest.
were. They
Right
were.
out in front of there, televised it and everything.
Oh yeah, very odd.
Well,
Yeah.
First off, Chester, for me, I'm not sure about the other guys, but for me, you're stuck on the Mona Lisa and the
No
Bernstein
way.
Bears, and it's kind of been throwing things off.
Yeah, you are.
But
I've been watching the stream to see what you're pointing to.
yeah, it's been difficult. It's funny how none of us we wanted to kind of say anything because we were just kind of going along.
I'm sorry. This is on your side. I see. Well, you know why? You know why that is? Because they change things again. They keep changing stuff, and now I have to literally come in here and do this kind of stuff. Oh, geez, let me come back. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a lot better. Yeah. So I've looked into that too, Thundaro, and there's the certain thing. There's the 2012 issue, and people bring up the idea of the Matrix, right? Well, the Matrix been changing. Then they bring up time travel. Well, because time travel is going back, and that brings up the idea of to what end, right? What is the reason? Not only for be able to do anything and make changes in the past, but what about just the changes that are happening? Why do you change a logo or Berenstain Bears? Why aren't there some actual large, massive things happening that change grand philosophy, the way the world is set, right? The stages of geopolitical politics, right? Those things seem to be right, still in motion, but these other small things are, and if it is something that's odd and strange, it doesn't affect the great geopolitical concepts or religion, and that's the one that I wanted to bring forward, because as you were saying that, I'm thinking, okay, if this is true, if there's an idea that something didn't happen and should, or maybe prophesied, because taking a biblical concept, if prophecy didn't happen, then we are beyond where we should be. Maybe that is a good thing, right? Where God had told people certain things, the the spirit had worked in through various concepts, right? We expect certain things to happen, maybe through the uh, the growth of religion, the idea people accepting various things. Maybe we are in a time frame of given more time. Maybe it's a God issue, not a matrix issue, not a CERN issue. Maybe the creator of the universe himself is allowing certain things to happen. And maybe if anyone can change things in the past and change the Bible, which is where Chester has been talking about,
Hmm.
it would be him. And if you can do that and catch people's attention on a small scale, those people who are looking for the truth, maybe that is the issue.
Well, there's one thing. Okay, forget about the Q concept in terms of politics. There is one thing that's being constantly being talked about: the Great Awakening,
Yeah. Okay.
and that in itself is actually fascinating. Why? Because as humanity is figuring all this out, forget about Donald Trump and politics and everything. It's just the fact that Donald Trump became president and the Great Awakening actually happened. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the fact that now people are actually realizing that we have been bombarded by fake news for throughout history.
Oh, sure.
If and now, uh, like I said, forget about the politics of Donald Trump. It's just the structure. Someone from the outside comes in, disrupts the system, and the system is fighting back. As the system is fighting back, normal everyday people are awakening, realizing, hold on a sec, CNN is fake news. They have been fake news for a long time. And this is just one example.
Hmm. Well,
And then people started to realize this. But the Great Awakening, if you expand it further, you realize information in terms of health, information in terms of politics, information in terms of sports, everything. People are starting to pay attention. They're they're actually taking time from their daily routine in life to focus and realize there is something going on beyond all this normal everyday stuff, and it goes right to all the fantastic stuff that we're talking about
Yeah, but it
here.
also it comes into a fact is that or is it simply propaganda? And seeing as you mentioned fake news and stuff, the greatest fake news in the history of the world that we know of anyway, of course, was Rome's propaganda against Carthage. So extreme. Now keep in mind that Rome, the great mighty Rome, right? They were nothing but a bunch of pirates, right? And they literally stole everything they had. And they went and dominated and brutalized the world. But the mighty Rome with Carthage, actually, they were so, and of course, the stories of Hannibal and all that. I'm not going to get into the detail of Carthage, but they had so much heavy propaganda against Carthage for people to destroy the concept of them, so that people would never remember them. We to even the extent that they burned their own babies alive to dark gods. That even today in Tunisia and other places, the people still perceive the Carthaginians as being baby burners, even today. Right, and of course we know that had nothing to do with it. Birth rate was very high. I mean, the death of babies was very high back in those days. And the what the Carthaginians did was they would cremate their babies and put them in little urns, and they had a little special baby graveyard, simply to remember the babies. It was nothing more nefarious than just simple culture, right? They weren't burning babies at all. They were simply burying babies in cremation. But yet, even today, 2,000 years on, the propaganda and fake news of Rome persists with the Carthaginians. So, sorry.
That went dark.
No,
Well,
no,
yeah, but it's a very very poignant moment of fake news in history, right?
no. That's yeah, and all this fake. Okay, here's where. Okay, great point, Chester. And here's where I was leading to. All this fake news, this great awakening, is that inherently the human brain, the analytical human part of the brain, regardless of whether you're emotional or just a son of a bitch calculator like Mr. Spock, it will subconsciously play back your events of the day. And if something's not adding up, it's going to persist in the back of your head. All this stuff that we're talking about, the Mandela effect, has I'm starting to see patterns here where if something happens in your life, if you become aware of something, just like the Mandela effect, your mind is going to start to play. It's going to try to connect the dots. But if those dots are not connecting, that's when that little spark of curiosity grows into sometimes obsession. It, we all do this. This is the human. This is the human effect. You know, 1 plus 1 has to equal 2, regardless if you're autistic or not. End of
Yeah,
my
yeah.
end of my statement. Proceed, please.
There is another more benign explanation that people have come up with as well, that it is literally just a side effect of time travel. Somebody in the future has discovered a way, or maybe we've already done it now, to go back in time. But doing that causes reverberations in the time stream, which causes weird changes that people don't really understand. Certain things that are minor, like the GIF logo or things like this. But it could also potentially, the butterfly effect, as people know it colloquially, it also could potentially cause big things like people losing family members and stuff like that.
Yep,
Um, and
that's
that
interesting.
the reason for like CERN and Google's quantum computers and things is they're trying to fix it. They're trying to find a way to fix it. That is one of the theories. It's a
Yeah,
more
it could be
nice
benevolent
version.
and not
Yeah.
nefarious. True, true, true.
Yes.
And
Or could be, or on the flip side, it's not that they're trying to fix it; they're trying to repair it. That's
Yeah.
Right.
that's that's a possibility because
now,
hey, scientists, lack of a better description, scientists destroy more than they create to get to learn.
yeah, but
I mean, they started off with a hammer. Now they got atomic lasers, but they're still destroying things so they can learn something.
yeah, that's true. But now there are a couple of the Mandela effects we haven't touched on yet, and we're going to touch on here before we get out. One of them is, there are two big ones. One of them is the movement of bodily organs within the human body. You say what?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's a big
Oh
one, dude.
my.
Because we all know where our kidneys are. Right? Because especially those of us who are boys that have gone and played football or boxing and stuff and have pissed blood for a day, because we got our kidneys racked, which I have several times. The kidneys, you can take your fist and you can put them right there in your lower back, and that's where your kidneys are. Nope, they're
Yep.
way up in your chest, just under your heart. Did you know that? Even though all the
No.
time
No.
growing up, the kidneys were right there where I could put my fist and touch on them. We had special padding in football just to cover the kidneys and many other things. But now, nope, they're way up in your back. Your stomach, I'm just
Mm-hmm.
using this as an example. Your stomach, which was down below and just above your intestines, now is way up to, pushing into your heart. There are several things with bone structure, organs, and stuff that are in your body that are completely different than what we were taught when we were kids. Completely
Yep.
different, radically shifted, right? That is one, and I don't know that there's much conversation we can have about that,
Well, on
because
that one specifically, actually, and before people will say, well, people were just wrong, right? We just didn't know. We didn't have the way to look into the body. But people have been doing autopsies for ever. Like
yes, they
we
have.
know where our organs are. We've known that for literally millennia. So the fact that this is now everybody is suddenly wrong about where the kidneys are located is interesting and terrifying at the same time.
Yeah, but it doesn't make sense because
Yeah.
when I grew up doing boxing and football, of course, just where I grew up, and we all know about rabbit punches in the back of the neck and also kidney
Hmm.
punches. We know all about this stuff because we get yelled at when we do it, and it's always down here at the lower back where all that concern is. And like I said, I've been hit there, and I've pissed blood because of it. right?
Hmm.
But yet now they're way in this weird position here, the stomach and stuff. And like I said, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't cut bodies open daily, but I know that they're showing on. This is just a weird one I saw, and it just popped in my head to talk about it. But if you want to go and talk about organ movement in the Mandela effect, there's a lot of it. Actually, it's not just it's
Oh, well,
Well,
bones and
even the
actually,
most important
I
muscle in
I
the
can,
human body has moved. Because
I can,
I remember reading in biology books and anatomy books and things of this nature, and the heart was always supposed to be off to the left hand side of your chest. It's in
it
the
is.
middle, but off to the left. Well,
Yeah.
now it's pretty much right smack dab in the middle of your
well,
chest.
I can tell you for this, I can tell you the reason. It's because the blue-blooded lizard people are becoming more and more saturated
There's
with humanity.
that's true.
Gosh, these searches. Come on now, human heart. Damn it.
Or we
Yep,
could
look at it.
take a
Boom.
moment
There you go.
to do
Boom.
an
We
autopsy
know
on
this is
somebody
wrong.
here.
We know this is wrong. It is to the left of the chest. We know
Yep.
this.
And
All
one of
right.
the a great example of how I know for a fact that it's wrong is because one of the greatest basketball players to ever play basketball in America was known as Pistol Pete, and he died because his heart was on the wrong side. He had that condition where his heart was on the wrong side, and they didn't really know how to deal with it. His heart started going crazy, and it killed him.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
even
I'm pretty sure
notable
he died
in
on the court.
simply being an American. When you stand up in the morning in your classrooms and do your Pledge of Allegiance, what do? You put your hand
Yep,
over your
put your
heart, and
hand
where
over
do you
your heart.
put it? You put it over your left breast, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But I mean, this is how deep this goes. This is no joke, right? What is being done, the propaganda that's being put out, or have things actually changed to such a radical point that the human physiology has shifted? That is freakiness, right?
Yeah, that's madness.
It is madness.
I mean,
And
you can go and look at like just look at older movies and stuff. Where do they stab people? They don't stab them right dead center because one,
no,
that's really hard to do because the sternum's right there,
that's right.
and two, there's nothing there. But if you look at that, say the heart was where we all say it is off to the left a little bit, or you might hit one of the aorta or something, but you're not going to hit the heart in the if you stab
You
right in the middle.
Chester, go ahead and throw X-ray into your search.
In what way?
So, well, heart X-ray. So, a heart picture. I mean, these pictures are, an X-ray is an actual picture, though.
Yeah,
Hmm.
you're right. Yep, it's weird. It's see, this person's even making a note of it here. The heart should be here, but no, it's down here. The stomach is up there. This is a female. But yeah, huh? It's weird, dude. Once again, this person is making the mention of it, right? It's weird.
Well, that's too far over. No, on most of those, it's in the middle, and then leftish.
Well, there's
I'm not
the
sure.
lower
I'm not.
lobe is going into the left side, true. But dude, you and I
Yeah.
both know that that's not accurate. This is more accurate, right? This is it's more over. But
Yeah.
this is just one thing, dude. There are tons of little physiological changes that are affected by the Mandela effect, and it's weird, dude. It is very
If
bizarre.
Okay.
anything, from the pictures you see there, it should be the inverse from the books I've read, where it would be just slightly in the middle, whereas now it's pretty much all in the middle and just slightly to the left.
Are you
Uh,
locked on your own screen, Chester?
He's locked
okay,
on the YouTube screen. Yeah, he's boomering it
Oh
up right
my
now.
goodness!
No, how?
here's where
Hold on a second. No, I didn't
like
touch anything.
We're seeing
You're
we're
well, here's
seeing the stream in your screen on the Hangout, and then
I
the thing,
didn't realize
it's
that
the
until
right
then.
thing.
okay. Regarding the Mandela effect in terms
Oh,
of
that
the
is
heart and
weird.
stuff like that, the doctors better get it right.
Okay, now
Yeah.
let's take a look at this stuff, right? Over here. All right. Now we're looking at a human skull, right? And we have the bone and the ocular hole, right? But yet, is that always the way it was, or do we remember skulls having being completely open and no bone behind it? Hmm? Now,
See,
I've actually
I'm
held a lot
torn
of
on that one
skulls in my hand, so you know.
Uh,
because
you gonna elaborate on that, Chester, or just gonna walk?
Meaning, this up here is what it is. The eye opening is a very the bone is not what is keeping it there. It's muscle, right? Which is why
yes,
you can go in and scoop the entire eye out, right?
right.
It is not a bony ridge that it is floating in, like in this, what is supposed to be what it is today, right? It is not.
And in fact, if you look, there's a video of the pro wrestler Vader wrestling in, I believe it's Germany, with another wrestler, and his eye literally just pops out,
Hmm.
and it just hangs there for a second, and he takes it and pushes it back into its socket.
Yeah, it's but little things like organs and bones and this isn't the best way to do this search. But like I said, you can go check videos on YouTube and stuff that just cover it very completely. And like I'm saying, we're not sitting here saying this is the absolute truth. We're just saying that this is weird and this is fascinating stuff. And
Hmm.
what's going on, right? Because look where the stomach is in this picture. Let me see if I can bring it up a little bigger. Look where the stomach is. That's a weird position. I mean, look at the kidney placement. It's just odd. There's a lot of things about the facial structure with the jaw and the bones and the eye sockets and things like that. But anyway, we're not really prepared to go into that super deep. And of course, that's not what we do in the show anyway. We're kind of covering the general concept of the conversation. But this is one I definitely think we need to finish with: the Kennedy assassination. Now, here's the thing. I saw the Zapruder film growing up. I was a kid in the 70s. This is something that was very fresh and raw in people's minds. It changed America, right? And I remember very clearly having two guys in the front seat, Secret Service guys in the front seat, and Kennedy and his wife in the back, and the governor and his wife in a white version of this vehicle following behind. Owadi, finished, right? But now the Zapruder film shows the governor and his wife sitting in the car with them, in a six passenger stretch car, which we don't. When have you ever seen one like that? And of course, we do know that if you go to the museum where they have the actual car, it's a just a front and back seat. There's no middle stretch. So this is one that's all over itself because the Zapruder film has changed, but yet we have actual physical things in reality to show that no, it didn't happen like that. But the Kennedy one's a huge one, dude. And now, if you look at the Zapruder film, it actually looks quite clear that Jacqueline Kennedy killed him. She's culpable. It looks like it, but that was never ever mentioned. No one ever brought that up. Only thing that was ever
Hmm.
mentioned about Jacqueline Kennedy was the fact that she panicked and tried to get out, and people thought that was a little not very wifely of her. That's it, right? There was no and never even a hint of suspicion on Jacqueline Kennedy at all. But now, if you watch that Zapruder film, she looks like she's the one who shoots him. It's
Hmm.
radically
What?
shifted.
Are you serious?
Yes, dude. I'm dead
Well,
serious.
play it. Find that video and play it here. Let's have a
Okay,
look at it because
sure.
this is some serious head head fake for me. I mean, I thought it was somebody on the grassy knoll, and then I thought it was somebody. What is it? The driver reaching back and taking a shot, and now you're telling me his wife? Oh my God!
Well, and
Well,
if
I
now it's completely impossible for the driver to have done it because supposedly it was a six-seater car, whereas I remember a few
Yeah.
years back you could see um, people make that claim, and it makes sense because it was only a normal car with four seats, where it looked like the driver kind of turned back a little bit, and then bang.
yeah,
But
that's yeah,
Here we go.
that's
but now it's impossible because it's a six-seated car. There's no way he
Watch.
could have
No,
done that
watch. Here
without
we go.
hitting
Here
other
we go.
people.
Here it is. Six-seated car. Doesn't make any sense. Coming through. Watch her movement, George. Watch it. Uh,
Again, Chester, we can't see what you're seeing yet because it's not your thing's not working
we're
right.
delayed.
all right. No problem. Let me come over and have this because that's the problem now with the Hangouts. I have to each one of them. No, it's in here. Just click on my screen. Oh, I see what you're doing. Now that is weird. Why is it doing that, dude? All right, let me fix this for these guys real quick. Yeah, YouTube just ticks me off, man. Um, Here we go. Now you guys should be able to see that fine. And let me check the other side to make sure it isn't screwed up. Okay, let me do it
Holy
again
shit.
here.
So,
Okay.
but
So
but it's always been that the guy in front of him gets shot by what passes through his neck, right?
Right? Now look, she is sitting here. Look what she's doing. Now, this is different, right? Now, hold on a second. Take a look. This is very different, right? He's put his head over, his arm over his forearm, his forehead. He looks like he's in some kind of distress. He looks locked up. Now, we know he had some arthritic and various troubles, and it looks like she's trying to help him here. I mean, this is new. What is this? He looks like he's locked up, right? She's like, "Are you okay? You okay? You okay?" And boom, right? And she's leaning in there, and she's her hands behind him. Now you see she's now cradling him, holding him, almost like an assassin would. And now she's going to move, and as she's moving, it seems as if she's trying to get out of the car, right? But this is not the Zapruder film. It is most certainly not. First of all, why is he locking up there? And if he was, then why isn't this a major point of talking about? What was going on with the president? Was he having a seizure? Has anyone ever heard that? No, of course not. But it looks
Wait,
like
wait,
he's
wait, wait,
having some
wait.
kind of seizure. Look at it. He's having a problem. He's having a
Yeah,
problem.
it
He's
looks like
locked
he's
up.
having a seizure, a heart attack, something.
Something,
He can't
right?
breathe.
And she's coming in there and she's grabbing a hold of him. Then her hand's in a weird position. Then boom, the shot looks like it literally comes out of her hand and blows out his head from that side. Instead of a shot going in, it looks like a shot is coming out of his head, right?
yeah,
And
Yeah.
yeah,
then the way
Oh,
she
you're
cradles
right.
it, and then
I see what you're
then
saying.
she
The
does her
angle of the
thing.
shot is the angle of the shot is going upwards instead of downwards or straight.
Yep, exactly. This is not the Zapruder
Oh,
film.
holy smokes!
Look at it.
Holy
It's
smokes!
completely different. And of course, you have these dudes sitting in here, which is not at all.
The shot is going upwards. Holy smokes!
I told you, dude.
Oh my goodness, Chester. This is really because I remember even in the movie that they made by Kevin Costner, there's that whole
I was
line where
in
he
that
kept
movie.
saying
Did you know
back
that?
and to the left,
I was in that movie.
back
Did
and
you
to
know
the
Back
that?
left.
into the left.
Back and to the left.
Wait,
His
Yeah.
head does not go
And
back into the left here.
and it's
No.
and it's always and it wasn't the fact that she was it's just climbing out to get away, but because the explosion, the exit wound went to the rear, there was skull matter on the trunk, and she
Yep.
was grabbing for it. And here there's none. Oh my goodness! You
Right, yeah, that
just
was the way they had spun it, is that she was so freaked out she was trying to gather up the pieces of his skull and his brain.
yeah.
She
People
went
do
into
that. Like,
instant
oh yeah,
trauma.
oh yeah, right.
But
right.
that's not what she's doing right here. She's trying to get out of that car. That's what she's
let
doing.
it keep going, Chester. Let's see what else happens.
Jeez.
Yeah, because people will do that. They'll do odd things like, oh, he needs that part of his skull, or or
Right.
I need that part of my arm.
And then there's this Secret Service agent
You
who
know.
apparently jumped on the car, tries to stop her from jumping out of the
Yeah.
car as they're going that
Now I
fast.
remember that part. That is correct.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is
Wow.
ridiculous.
Chester, you said you were in the film or at the scene?
No, I'm in the movie JFK actually. In 2 points, I was a member of the University of Rhode Island marching band, and they were. This is when I first started before I moved over to Brown and stuff. But they were doing scenes, shots in Newport. For I guess replacing Montauk or Martha's Vineyard and stuff. I don't know what their point was, but maybe the Kennedys had something in Newport too. But nevertheless, Newport is very near to us, and they came over to us and they said we need a band to sit in a gazebo and play music. They come over, they put us in uniforms, and we're just in the background playing. We're actually playing actual music. Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm in this movie. I'm also in Mystic Pizza.
Told you, he's one of them. He's on the inside. Told
Yeah. I'm just an extra. I'm just in the background, you know. But I mean,
but yeah,
this is
it's interesting
ridiculous.
because that's not the same.
not.
Every American has grown up watching this film. They usually stop right before his head explodes, but we've grown up watching this film with the vehicle with the way she reacts, all of it. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't remember him freaking out before. I don't remember him going
Nope.
grabbing at himself or
Nope.
whatever's happening there, and then his head blowing up. I just remember in fact, I kind of remember him being up higher, like he was up on the back of the thing or something, and then his
No.
head
No.
went down,
He
like
was waving.
not up sitting on the back of it, but he was a little bit higher.
He was sitting up
And
straight and he was waving. Yeah.
yeah,
But no, but this is obviously not the Zapruder film. It's obviously not,
no,
and it's not even just the fact that they've changed the assassination itself. We've also seen a change in the fact that the car is completely different. Like I said, you can go to the museum and see the actual car, and it is a four-seater, not an six-seater, right?
yeah.
And like I said, and we can you also can find video of the governor and his wife in their white version of the four-seater car. So that's different. Then you have the fact that he's having some manner of seizure. It looks like she's holding him in. It looks like the shot is coming out of her right hand, right?
Hmm.
It's completely different. And this is the thing: when the Zapruder film is an absolutely gone over film, it's been going over so many times. If there was even a hint of Jacqueline Kennedy being involved with his death, that would have been all over the place, right? People
Yeah.
make jumps of logic. They make assumptions, right? That was never even hinted at. Like I said, like DeWolf and I had said, the only issue that came with Jacqueline Kennedy was that people were a little bit disappointed in how she reacted. That's it. This is
So
radical shift of history.
does this version of the film have the man with the umbrella in it?
Oh, that is a fantastic question,
Say that again.
because that man,
You're welcome.
the man with the umbrella, is one of the most talked about parts in the conspiracy theory. Why in God's name does he have an umbrella in Dallas when it's sunny out?
Well,
Like there's
and the
no
old
rain.
babushka woman too.
Yeah. And I didn't see him, but now this could be zoomed in version of it or something. Maybe that's why, but I didn't see him, but I wasn't really looking for him either. Um, but that is a very good question if this version
I
of it
think now,
has him in there.
in this particular instance, I think there may be something else going on besides Mandela Effect, because this is the JFK assassination, right? And this is
Hmm.
a film of it, and what we all grew up with, and what is available now. I think it's possible that this may be changed just due to the fact that it's the JFK assassination versus all these other odd things that happen in the world.
Hmm.
Well,
Well,
here's the question:
Hold on a second.
when did this
Curious.
change happen?
When did it change? Well, that's a good question. A lot of it is when did these things change? Curious TA says first shot hit him in the neck, and that's why he locks up. Well, let's take a look. Let's see if that is what this film is showing us. All right, let's take a look. So he's right along. Everything looks fine. He's good. And then he locks up. I don't see any blood. I don't see any damage. There's no movement in his body. We saw the caliber of that shot, right?
Yeah.
There's no blood here. There's no movement. There's no nothing. He's just locking up as if in a seizure. There's no bullet wounds. His body isn't jarred. There's no splatter of blood. There's nothing, right? He's just locking up for some reason, right? And
And
there he
now it
is
does
locking
look
up.
like there is someone standing back there, but I can't. It's zoomed in on it. It's zoomed in more than the original film was, to eliminate the Umbrella Man from even being a consideration, because right about there is where he was in the original film,
Well, this is
and
a
he's
blown
not
up
there now.
version, yeah. This
Yeah.
is a blown up version. Let me see if I can get a little spread out version. Here we go. High quality Zapruder. Slowed and enhanced. Oh, thank you very much. Okay, yeah.
I
Come on.
mean, honestly, what this does, this change changes everything about the JFK conspiracy
Hmm.
to being no conspiracy. Because that exit wound coming out the front instead of to the back
Yep.
means that there was not a grassy knoll shooter. There was not a shooter from the front, that which is, that it was indeed Oswald that he shot. It went through his back, went through his neck area, and then he took the next shot, and it looks like it then hits him in the back of the head, and the exit wounds out to the front. No conspiracy, no problems. Oswald did it,
Yep.
but of course, all through from everything that I've seen up until now, when you showed me this here in 2019, everything that I've ever known before was that he was hit and he slumped forward, which would be the Oswald shot, and then he was struck from the front, which would be the grassy knoll shot, which of course correlates to the the SCI, SCI. Whoa, um, wrong thing to say. Sorry, everyone out there in my background. The
Uh-oh.
CIA,
Uh-oh.
my
Freudian
my
slip.
my my CIA person I mean that I've heard from. I didn't know this guy, but in which he said that he used a um, a one shot pistol and fired the shot and took the round and put it up on the fence. And I think it was a deathbed confession that I heard from. And someone at some point found this cartridge later on at the fence.
Well, now the
Okay,
interesting
But
thing for me is
that car looks like a 6-seat car.
it is, but it's not supposed to be. Right? Now that blue car in the back was white in the original film, and it had the governor, mayor and his wife in there, or the governor. I think it was the mayor, or this dude right here. And so even the blood splatter goes up. Yep.
yeah,
So
yeah, that's really odd.
And I didn't see any umbrellas, gentlemen. Am I missing it? Am I
Yeah, I
just
know
not
it.
seeing
yep,
it?
So
it's
the
not
guy
there.
with the umbrella's gone.
Yep,
And the woman's gone. I think the whole Zapruder film has just been changed
it has.
for
Um,
whatever reasons.
You know what we're talking about here? We're talking about a serious high-level Hollywood manipulation here.
yeah.
Right.
But I mean, that's where I wanted to end it today because that is
Weird.
ridiculous, especially for those of us that are a little bit older. And the fact that we grew up with this, especially for those of us who come from the 70s, the Kennedy thing was all over the place all the time, dude. It was a very, I don't think the younger people truly understand the effect of Kennedy's assassination had on the psyche of America. George is older than me, so he probably even has a better understanding of it than I do. But it was serious. It shifted. It changed our culture. Some people would even say that hippie revolt of this late '60s was a direct result of the death of Kennedy. But George, you got about 15 years or so on me. Why don't you tell us what it was like when this happened?
Chester, I'm only 6 months older than you are. Come on.
Okay, George. But no, seriously,
No,
how
seriously, um, I was born when or I think no, I wasn't born. I was born a few years after the assassination. But what I can tell you is, growing up in the early '70s, where is my earliest part of my childhood memories,
yeah.
um, that plus Star Trek plus the spacewalk was the only three things in my field of reference.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about someone being, in the average age of 5 to 7 years old.
Mhm.
This permeated those three things permeated to me, and I was not watching any TV at the time either. I was just being a kid. We just got a black and white TV sometime in the mid '70s,
Mm.
but before that, those three things were paramount, and I didn't even know how to put them in context.
Yeah.
That,
So
that's how profound it was
it was profound.
from
Yeah,
from
I
my
remember
from my,
very
from my
clearly.
point of view.
I thought you were more older, a little bit older than me than that, but you're not. You're just a few years older than me, actually. But
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean seriously, this is a big deal. Now, a lot of the things we talk about today with the Mandela effect are shocking, weird, twisted, odd, whatever adjective you'd like to throw on top of that. But this was a major point in American history that they have obviously shifted. But in a way, I almost removed this from the Mandela effect in reality, because this seems just pure propaganda to me. right? Whereas some of the other Mandela effect things are much more odd. And when people get into conversations about parallel Earths being squashed together, or CERN's activities, or time travel having a paradoxical effect, et cetera, it's, I could buy that. I could buy it. Right, but this right here, even though it's a major element of the Mandela effect, for me, it feels just more like some manner of propaganda, actually.
Yeah,
Could be.
yeah, yeah.
It very well could be. It also could be what I was talking about, which to me, the theory that it's most of this stuff is a side effect of somebody somehow messing with time, either through time travel or some other experiment, and it's just time trying to correct itself. Makes more sense to me
Hmm.
than it's some big grand elaborate plan by God or whatever. Because let's be honest, if God's God, it wouldn't really matter if minor things are changed in our timeline. He's still going to do what he wants to do. Um,
Oh,
so
it's
it
technically,
very well could be that this is just another one of those side effects that
It could be.
everybody, we remember it differently because it did change, but it's not really a huge deal now to us today because it doesn't really change much. It's not, I mean, even when Trump tried to declassify everything they had on JFK, he still couldn't declassify everything because the people who didn't want everything declassified aren't going to let it all be declassified, but he got most of it out. And even then, it's at this point, it's been so long now that it wouldn't really change much in a day-to-day life basis of everyday people.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, to know the absolute truth of that.
Well, and,
well,
and and the chat is making some very interesting points here. Actually, is this proof the Earth is flat? No, it's not. What's the conspiracy theory of? Oh, I'm sorry, he was just coming in. Let me see here. Oh yeah, Bullet says Illuminati not a factor. That's sarcasm, I'm pretty sure. Santa Raven says because umbrellas are cool. All right. Scott says this can be changed with some simple Photoshop. Yep. Mossad killed Kennedy, Model 3 says. Okay. Eric says, I think people just didn't and still don't want to accept JFK was assassinated. Well, actually, I get that point, especially for the older generation, say my parents' generation. But for me, I don't care. He's just another
Yeah.
president. It doesn't mean anything to me. But I do recall very clearly because this right here, what Scott is saying, is very same thing I said and same thing George said. The moon landing and this was inundated in documentaries and news events all the time when I was growing up. Yes, dude, it was. They never shut up about it, right? And yet so therefore we know exactly what the Zapruder film looks like, and that is not. And it's so radically different. It's easy for anybody to notice. The car has a whole nother row of seats.
Yeah.
She. It looks like she shoots him, huh? It's not this
Hmm.
weird, right? Eric says, not to give Satan credit, but the Bible says something about him being able to alter time, or am I wrong? Well, actually, if, it's interesting when we talk about Satan from the biblical
Yes.
point of view. Satan is an angel, and he has any power that an angel has. I do believe that
Hmm.
Hollywood has added a lot of power and ability to Satan that the Bible never mentions, but let's let DeWolf elaborate upon that.
Well, hang on. Before the wolf does, it's actually real simple. He doesn't have to mess with time itself. He just has to mess with everybody's perception of time. He can do that because time doesn't actually exist as we understand it. It's mostly just our perception of it.
Well, that's a whole
And
nother
because
conversation, yeah.
when people say time, they think it's like this great force. It's really not. It just is. But that, like I said, like you said, that's a whole other conversation. So all he would have to do is screw with enough things and deceive enough people, which he's this great deceiver, into having false memories that they're so convinced of that they can't escape. Right? They can't let it go. It becomes an obsession for them.
Mhm.
Um, which I believe he's very capable of doing. Hence his name, the Great Deceiver. But the Bible does speak of in during the end times a great deception goes out into the world. It doesn't say what that great deception is, but maybe that's what this is. Maybe it's people's minds literally turning against them. Their memories are not what reality says they are.
Well, it could just be simply someone trying to tell someone that strawberry ice cream is better than cookies and cream, which is absolute bull. But DeWolf, please elaborate upon the powers of Satan.
Oh, well, I misheard that. See how memory is. God can alter time. Satan cannot. I think,
No.
and Thundero addressed that properly by saying that he can change your perception of it because
Yeah.
he is part of this world. But physics and how the world works, no, that's not Satan's
No.
realm. That's God's realm.
That's
Which
right.
takes me
Correct.
back to what I said before: is God preparing people? George called it the Great Awakening, preparing people and letting us know things are going on in a bigger way so that we can prepare ourselves.
Right. Yeah, but no, Hollywood has done a lot to add ability to Satan. In the Bible, like I said, from a strictly biblical point of view, Satan is just an angel. He doesn't have any special abilities. Hollywood is constantly throwing new powers and abilities on him. He is not the equal of God in any way, even
No,
close. He's just an angel, right?
that's right.
In the New Testament. Now, in the Old
And in
Testament,
fact,
he's actually worked for God, and he's more of a someone who God bounces ideas off of, and so he
in
changes
fact,
quite radically.
he is a lesser angel than Michael because Michael's going to one day, according to the Bible, come and kick the crap out of him.
Well, he already
So,
did. We already did.
yeah, and he's going to do it again later at the end of the world.
No, I mean
Um,
he
Well,
stabs him right through the heart, right?
here's
yeah,
something that Chester says that is poignant about Satan, and that is the fact that he was the most beautiful and the angel of music and the arts.
Hmm.
And so you got goes straight back into Hollywood.
It does. It does. But
yep,
I don't want to get into this conversation because it's a different one, but I also do believe there is a great confusion between the Satan, the dragon, and the Lucifer. I do think those things have been confused over time because we use the
There
word
is, and that
Satan
is a different
today.
show.
It is a different show, but just that just to make the point. But
Mm.
anyway, you guys have had some great points over here you've been making, and of course I see Bullet is mentioning John Teeter again. That's an interesting conversation. That might be into odd people throughout history, TFT maybe. But there have been a few very interesting, odd humans show up with interesting information and not in the right place. Of course, that one guy that came into Japan, I don't think it's John Teeter, I think it's a different guy. But the one that came into Japan and he had a passport and he was from some unknown country in Europe that doesn't exist. And they put him in a cell to question him and figure out what was going on. And he just disappeared literally into thin air. There are some odd humans throughout history that have unexplainable situations around them. John Teeter is another one, of course, and I do believe John Teeter is the one where people think is actually Trump, right? The time traveling Trump.
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
yes, correct.
yeah. But anyway, let me come back over here and bring us back to the start.
Bring some sanity back into this, Chester.
I'm going to
Oh
try.
goodness.
Now, the Mandela effect. I don't even know how to classify it. Because it's so broad, it's so extreme. There's so much information, and I think the average person would simply just dismiss it as a crazy conspiracy theory and silly, foolish humans. There might well be some of that involved. There might be memory issues. There might be just perception issues. They might have some things where companies have simply changed their logo and it's simply not seen. What about I want to be an Oscar Mayer Wiener? It's not spelled the same anymore. Does it matter? No, it doesn't. But it's so broad and so extreme, going from anything to maps, land masses, organs in the human body, assassinations, and Fruit Loops logos changing. I mean, can you think of anything that is more insane than that? I can't.
No,
And so the Mandela effect is something that will persist because there are questions that cannot be answered. Is it CERN? Is it time travel? Is it nonsense? I don't know, but it's certainly interesting. Any of you guys have some closing comments on the Mandela effect?
I'll start off with saying that I'm thoroughly fascinated, and I see this as a convergence of multiple effects: the human unconsciousness, the telephone message effect, the what we call the genetic memory effect, um, and just quite honestly, I think propaganda, censorship of information.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
that's definitely part of it. That's
is all
definitely part of it.
is all focused on deleting history or altering our perception of history.
Well, George, there are a few moments in history that we know of that history was deliberately changed, right? We know the Romans did some very weird things with the changing of history. We know and we know that they did that, right? We also know during the Reformation, 400 years ago, there was an absolute changing of history and rewriting of history. And these are just two moments in history that we know they changed it. Think about how many other times in history we don't know about, right?
Yep.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
nothing new under the sun.
We're just becoming more aware of it because information. That's. I mean, look at it. We have an international group of people here,
Hmm.
directly within the Hangouts, and by extension into the chat.
Yeah.
How that's information on an international level being passed on directly without the filters.
Yeah, but
This
Canada doesn't count as international, George. Sorry.
Does Canada count at all?
Not really. No.
well, actually, here's the Mandela effect on Canada. Canada is not a country.
Huh?
Okay.
No, Canada. I kid you not. I am deadly serious here. It's not a joke. Canada is not a country. It's a collection of 10 different countries coming together into a dominion. We this land that you talk about as a country is not a country. It is a dominion of smaller countries. All the provinces are countries unto themselves with an agreement to work together
Oh,
Them
under the
people sound like
dominion.
Americans
kind of like
now.
a union, yeah, DeWolf.
A
Uh,
union
no,
or states.
it's a dominion. If you look at any
A
any
confederation, even.
Mm.
no, not confederation, it's a dominion. If you look at
Or a
any official
confederation.
if you look at any official documentation, they do not say Canada as a country. They say Dominion of Canada, which and this will blow your mind. The provincial governor, so you guys have an understanding of what I'm talking about. There's the prime minister and there's the premiers. The premiers are like a governor of each state. Well, the premier of each individual province has more power than the prime minister of Canada.
Hmm. Well, that's how America should be. But I do think this might
Well,
have a
I'm
little bit all
confused.
to do with your separation, how you guys separated from Britain, though. We did it forcibly. You guys did it with a whimper, which is kind of what Canada does anyway.
Well, also, this little bit of information is not known to the world or to the Canadian at large. And this is in itself is a Mandela effect because when Canada became a dominion of collection of provinces, individual countries together, it was known then, but the information is quite literally an extension of the Mandela effect.
I see. I didn't know that one. There you go. What about you, DeWolf? What's your closing points here in the Mandela Effect, dude?
I most certainly think that information is part of this issue. It's how we remember things, and I, the idea that some great things are changing, and via time travel and that kind of a concept goes a little bit too far fetched. I think Occam's razor tells us to keep things simple.
That's
The
right.
simplest explanation is the fact that there is so much information that's being bombarded to us daily, and it's hard maybe to process all of that, even from our childhood. And the important part there is, how does it consider yourself, and how it you connect to the universe at large? And that would mean, what is your philosophy and what is your religion, and how is that going to take you through this world and the next? And in doing that, keep in mind to always be keeping things in mind and observe those things around you. Don't let them just fly by, fly past you, so that you may have a distant memory of it. Grasp a hold of every day and enjoy it.
There you go.
Oh, smokes, that
There
was
you go.
awesome. Was that a chairman's speech? Because
I
that
think
was
it
awesome.
was. I think it was. Thundero, go ahead, dude.
Oh, the Mandela Effect is a fun one.
It
It's a
is.
very fun one, actually, because it opens up our minds to the possibilities of how important our knowledge is, how important information is, like DeWolf was just talking about. It is the old axiom is knowledge is power, and knowledge is power, and that is why it's terrifying to people to believe or to think for even a moment that their memories are wrong, that what they believe wholeheartedly is wrong, that in some cases people they knew didn't exist, people they loved didn't exist. That would be a terrifying reality. But there's one thing you have to understand is even if, let's say, it's all confirmed tomorrow that somebody's been messing around with reality, time, reality, space, it's all been messed with, the end of the day, it really wouldn't change much for most people, because we're all here, and the only way out is through in this world. So if your information is corrupted, that does not mean that your wisdom is corrupted. Try and be happy. Try and find a good way to live. It is Easter Sunday here in America. It is a day of rebirth, a day of resurrection. Even back before it was called Easter, it was this thing. Try and have a good day, and try and have a good year, in all honesty, from this day forward. So my Easter blessing to you would be, remember the meaning of the rebirth today, and try and have a good year. Learn new things. That's the point of this show. We're trying to expand people's mind and have some fun. So try and keep an open mind and have a good time.
Well
Amen,
said.
brother.
Well said, dude. I guess my closing comments are simply this. Um, several times during this show and other shows we've had the panelists say that reality is not as you think it is. It is not what you perceive. And maybe we should make a little note on where science believes that reality really is. I mean, well, of course, we understand science is an ever going thing. It is not. It is not the beginning and the end. It's all theory. We understand that. Even though a scientist will talk to you like it's the absolute proof, don't listen, because it's just the current theory as we stand today. But here's what reality supposedly is. Reality is nothing but energy, and it's moving at different frequencies, and therefore you cannot interact with things. Like, for instance, if I'm taking and trying to put my hand to this little table that's sitting in front of me, I can't. And the reason why is not because it's actually a solid piece of matter. It's because the frequency of my body and the frequency of this thing are not the same, and therefore the frequencies are what are keeping me from getting through it. It's not the solidity of the wood, right? This is where science thinks we are sitting right now. Just like with the way you see, your eyes do not actually record information and pump it in your brain. It takes the data in, and your mind tells you what it thinks it is seeing, actually. So each person has their own creation. And I remember there was some experiment they did some years back, and they tried to find out, what does the world really look like? What does it really look like? Not our perception of it. And basically, what they came up with was a field of static that had outlines in it, right? And this is where they believe it is. So reality is energy itself. And if that is true, and therefore we have got to such a point that we can control energy in so many various ways, is it odd that we could alter something by manipulating the energy patterns, even to the extent of moving an entire country? Maybe not. But that is what scientists seem to tell us they think reality is, at least now. But the Mandela Effect is absolutely awesome fun. If you haven't done any diving into it, do so. And don't take it too seriously, guys. It's don't just enjoy it, because it is absolutely shocking bizarreness. And maybe one day we'll understand it a little bit better. But right now we don't. But
If
nevertheless,
anything, the Mandela Effect should teach you don't take things too seriously,
yes.
because very well the things you take seriously could be wrong. You just could have wrong information.
Oh
So
yeah.
if we're living in a world of total flux, which we are, don't take it so seriously.
Yeah.
Like I've said before, you're not going to get out of it alive anyway.
Yeah, and to bring it back to the Bible, which we have several members here that are very well read and understood in the Bible, and of course they are believers. But even from the very Bible, the Bible itself, as well as all the other religions in the world, you do realize that when God spoke or God sang, when we look at the Indian Vedas, it's always about sound. God is always making sound, and through his sound, he is changing reality. And of course, if we go back to Nikolai Tesla, and he said, if you really want to understand reality, you're going to need to understand sound and energy and vibration, right? And
Yeah,
it's a very interesting
Hmm.
point, right?
yeah.
Absolutely.
What's the rumor about Tesla? He was testing some sound device, and when somebody came to his door, he says, "Oh, sorry, I'll just turn it off. You know, I can literally shatter the world with this little doohickey."
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Tesla was quite an interesting fellow. But anyway, we've definitely gone way past the pale on this show, dude. 2.5 hours. Wow. But
You know
it's a
what?
fun one.
It only seemed like an hour. There you go.
Yeah, no, we have a good fun time. And thank you guys all for joining us again. And just keep in mind, of course, our new week is, of course, this is the beginning of the week here. But we have of course, our news shows. We have our Drone Record Fan Edition. We have our Bugbear's Basement, where we will be continuing our story God's Blood, which is a Marvel role playing system where we're demonstrating to you guys and et cetera, et cetera. We do a lot of things here during the week, and we're having a lot of fun. And we like that you guys are joining us. And if you want to be part of it, remember to check out those links, guys. You can come on here and be part of what we're doing too. But other than
Oh,
that,
before you go, Chester,
yeah,
one small announcement. Just coming up after FanSpeak, Danelli and I will be hanging out on my channel, building Danelli's story into a comic book. We're going to chronicle every step of the way from Danelli's concept to the final product.
awesome,
And we'll be spending about an hour every evening after FanSpeak to go through the process, and everyone's welcome to come by and watch how it's all happening.
awesome. That sounds fun. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us, and later.
Bye.